Good afternoon all. Good afternoon, Sadiqa O'Brien. Pleasant Sunday to you. Christopher Cuffy. Good afternoon. Hi, Carol. Claire Carrington. Good afternoon, Pamela O'Connor. Arlene Lewis, Eva Smith Spivey. Good afternoon to you. Gabriel Phillip. Rukman Gangadine. Good afternoon to you. Ayana. Anna Sisneth, Alison Rogers, Mario Guevara. Wazid, Janice Batiste. Neil Francois, always present. Jamun Alamu, good afternoon to you as well. To all the others on the live this afternoon. Marva Frank, Mikel, Rondon Pay, Cheryl Seeley, Clinton Arlene, Marge France, good afternoon to all of you. Right, so it is this time, right? It's almost 1 o'clock. PF Cutters, Sarah Richards, Vivian Nicholas, Lyro Gray, Adav, or is it Adavi News? Carol, you're on time. Carol, View 101. Why are you upset? Annette Baird, Nadia Lewis, Susan Kadugan, Elizabeth Lakai, Ali, CIA, let me pronounce that, or Sia. Yes, good afternoon also. Let me jump into it. If you haven't gotten your copy of today's Sunday Express, I suggest that you do so, right? Because the Express learned the lesson from last week. They say, well, if he feel he going to distract us this week or distract from our story, they give you not one, not two, but three live sport related stories this week. And the main story, which is part 2 of the Live Sports Secrets Revealed series, is even more interesting than last week. Because last week, a lot of what was revealed was already known. And we got some new things last week, but now, this week, they went into details with the additional $8 million that was requested by Mr. Adolphus Daniel. So again, if you have not gotten your copy, I strongly suggest that you do so. Live sport funds tied to Dina hit. And as I did last week, I visited the Facebook page of Doubles and Coffee to see if Mr. Roberts would respond. And as was to be expected, he has not. Instead, he came on early this morning to talk about Fares and rehash a sort of old thing about Fares and the indemnity with Vincent Nelson and Fares tight pants and Fares posing for picture with three muscle men and all kind of nonsense. Right? It seems he's struggling this week to get a distraction. So it appears, based on what we're reading this week and what is expected to come in the coming weeks, if Trinidad is a real place, as I would like to think it is, Doubles and Coffee should now, or very soon, become bread and water. And you know where they serve bread and water, right? Yeah. If justice works in this country, then that is what should happen. But before I jump into that, let me just touch on two things quickly, where I see the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs, desperate for a headline, perhaps trying to assist Mr. Roberts. That is petty thing. So they put out a press release this morning on a Sunday. Major win for TNT exporters. The Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs is pleased to announce that Trinidad and Tobago will now benefit from zero reciprocal tariffs on key agricultural exports, including nitrogen and phosphate fertilizers entering the United States market. Now, my issue with this press release is the attempt by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or by extension, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, to take credit for something that they had absolutely nothing to do with. Because for those of us who look at foreign news would know that Mr. Trump took a decision to reverse some of the tariffs that he would have imposed or implemented in April, owing to the fact that these tariffs are now having a debilitating impact or effect on the cost of living for many American citizens who would have supported him. And there is a belief from the Republican camp that reality also contributed to the significant loss or the shellacking that the Republicans took from the elections a couple Tuesdays ago, where they lost convincingly to the Democrats. All right? And so it reads here, on 14th of November 2025, President Donald Trump signed an executive order modifying the scope of reciprocal tariffs applied under the U.S. tariff regime. This decision reverses the earlier action of 2nd April 2025, when these items were removed from Annex 2 of Executive Order 14257 and subject to a 15% tariff. Under the leadership, here it says, under the leadership of the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, SCMP, missing an A in between, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs has engaged in sustained high-level diplomacy with the United States to secure relief for Trinidad and Tobago's exporters. So they're trying to take credit for something that Mr. Trump did to benefit perhaps the entire world and all those countries on whom he would have imposed these tariffs. But you see, if this government had any sense, they would know that you don't want to put something like that out on a Sunday morning, particularly when against the backdrop of news that Mr. Trump has said he has more or less made up his mind on what he's going to do with respect to Venezuela. But he's not ready to reveal it yet, but his mind is more or less made up. And just for clarity's sake, it wasn't the PNM that put out that, right? It was the international media, and I think it was first published here by Ian Allen. And unless I missed the memo that Ian Allen is now in the camp of the PNM, right? I don't see how they could blame the PNM for that. But then again, the UNC propaganda machinery is very creative, right? So it's early days yet. So they're probably trying to figure out a way to blame the PNM for that, right? But but I was making the point, you don't want to put out something like that under the leadership of the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, Prime Minister of the Republic. The Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs has engaged in sustained high-level diplomacy with the United States to secure relief for Trinidad and Tobago's exporters. Now, if it is that this was something specific to Trinidad and Tobago, as they want to suggest or give the impression, then obviously you wouldn't want to do it around this time, because people will say, well, maybe coincidence that this happened just around the time that you have these U.S. forces, these Marines, coming to do yet a second training exercise with soldiers with the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. I wonder. And we are told that these training exercises will take place under the cover of darkness, right? During the night and early dawn, when everybody else is sleeping and nobody can see what is taking place. So if any equipment or anything is being moved, most people will be asleep at that time and you all wouldn't see. Okay, but it's just normal, the Minister of Foreign Affairs told us that these exercises are intended to help Trinidad and Tobago deal with the crime situation. The crime situation that the Commissioner of Police has told us is under control. The crime situation that the government has told us is under control, because they've been quoting and murder statistics to say, well, crime is down here to date from where it was last year. So why you all need that help? And then if we juxtapose or we compare to Jamaica, where for the last decade, Jamaica has been recording in excess of 1,000 murders every year, more than Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, about 2 or 3 years ago, they would have recorded over 1,600 murders in 1 year. I think that was 2023, might have been 1,600 murders, right? However, this year they've seen a significant reduction in those murders, because they started off the year stating that they would like to put measures in place to at least bring murders under 1,000, and they are well on their way to achieving that target. And guess what? They didn't have the assistance of the US Marines and all of these different things. They have a drug problem, probably worse than we do, and yet still they were able to bring their murder statistics under control. So let's put in that out there for Mr. Sobers, who, based on his definition and that of his government of what zone of peace means, apparently if you have crime in your country, then the region is not a zone of peace. That's their definition. So as he said, they intend to turn Trinidad and Tobago into a zone of peace. Mr. Sobers, do you know what zone means? You want to make one country into a zone? It doesn't work that way. Zone means the entire Caribbean region. And when we talk about zone of peace, we mean the absence of the type of conflict that we see in other parts of the world. Like what takes place between Israel and Gaza, Israel and Palestine, what is taking place between Russia and Ukraine. We, in this part of the world, we have not had cause to worry about those things, right? The only thing we could, if you want to talk about conflict, is what's taking place now between the minister in the Ministry of Housing and the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the Minister of Housing, in the Ministry of Housing, ably supported by his Prime Minister, right, who refuses to condemn Mr. Roberts for what he's doing. One would have thought that she would have told him to stay in his lane the same way she told the other minister in the Ministry of Housing, Philip Alexander, to stay in his lane when he did a live talking about how India would nuke Venezuela if Venezuela were to launch an attack on Trinidad and Tobago. But it seems she's not willing to pull Mr. Roberts into his lane. And so he has been given free rein to continue what he's doing. And so this morning he came to continue his assault on Ralph Gonsalves and his family in a pathetic attempt to try and deflect from what is in today's Express. So we'll get to that shortly. All right. Trinidad and Tobago will be among the beneficiaries as the United States will now impose zero tariffs on key nitrogen and phosphate fertilizers, including anhydrous ammonia, urea, and urea ammonium nitrate. Trinidad and Tobago maintains a multi-billion-dollar export relationship with the United States, the single largest trading partner. And so again, they go on further to try and make it seem as if it is because of their representations that this has happened. No. So we ain't fooling anybody, right? Or they're desperate for a soundbite. So I don't know how many of you would have looked at the press conference that Mr. Sobers had on Friday, I believe it was. And a question was put to him by a member of the media with respect to the announcement by the US that they were going to ramp up or heightened operations in Trinidad. And when the question was put to him, he asked the reporter, where did you hear that? Where you get that from? And the reporter said, well, that came out of an interview that the Attorney General, John Jeremy, did with a US publication called the Financial Times. And it seems Mr. Sobers was unaware of that. Now, he's the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, and one would think that if the Attorney General is having such an interview with an international media house, that at least you would apprise the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs of these things. Or even if so he could probably look at the interview. One would think if it was available for viewing or if it were, depending on the forum and how it took place, at least the Attorney General would have informed his cabinet colleagues, look, this is what I said, because it's probably going to be published and people will be asking because they want to know what is this about. And the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs was totally oblivious, unaware of what the journalist was talking about. And he, after asking the question, he liked to put up his chest and he realized, hey, checkmate. He said, okay. So it seems the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. But we're not surprised. So let me get this right here, right? So, as I said, Mr. Roberts is trying to double down, triple down, quadruple down on the issue of Victoria Keys. And I hand it to him. Give him an applause. You successfully diverted public attention away from last week's live sports story with this thing about Ralph Gonsalves. And so so that dominated the public conversation for the last 4 to 5 days, right? Because as everybody now looking to jump out themselves and add and subtract to the whole equation, right? And so everybody was talking about that. So the battle is between the Folly Dunce and the rest of Trinidad and Tobago, who are trying to explain to them what open market means. Anybody with money who wanted to purchase a unit at Victoria Keys, you are free to do so. You do not go through the normal channels to get an HTC house, right? Yes, this is an HTC development. And yes, it is the units are under the control of the HTC because the HTC is the owner of the development, but it is not the usual method to get one. So whereas if you're one of the hundreds of thousands of persons who have been on the HTC NHA waiting list for many years, right? You have to wait and you have to go through the normal allocation process, the lottery system, as they say, unless, of course, you qualify for some special treatment. Maybe your home was destroyed by fire and the Ministry of Housing would step in to assist you, or perhaps if they have special housing allocated for members of the protective services and so on, and you qualify, yes. But for this one, once you have the money, they tell you the price, you go, and of course there must be some dealings with HDC because, as I said, they are the owners of the development. They are the ones holding the lease or the deed, and so to release it to you, you have to go through them. So it started off with Mr. Gonzalez's wife, his son, and then finally his daughter. And as the week wore on, then realized they decided to focus when they realized, well, we were saying that is foreigners, outsiders who come in and buy subsidized HDC housing at the expense of and the private citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So the point was made that Mrs. Gonzalez is a Trinidadian citizen by birth. She was born here, right? Yes, she's married to the Prime Minister of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and by virtue of that, she's a citizen of that country too. And she's also a citizen of Dominica by descent because her parents are from Dominica. But she was born in Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore she is entitled to purchase one of these units, just like any other citizen in Trinidad and Tobago, regardless of your status. Both of her children, by virtue of the fact that she is a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago by birth, they are citizens by descent because one of their parents is a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. But also, Solai, their daughter, is married to a Trinidadian, and she has a daughter who was born in Trinidad. All right? So she's Trinidadian on at least two fronts. So she too was entitled to purchase. So when they realize that, they come off of that train now, and the next thing they jump on is where we look at the date on the document, and we see it says the 30th of April, that the HDC hurried and signed up this agreement to sell her this unit on the 30th of April, 2 days after the general election, when we didn't have a prime minister sworn in and we didn't have a government in place. I just want to tell the fully dons that how it works. Stuart Young was the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago from the 18th or was it the 17th of March until the 1st of May when Kamla Persad-Bissessar was sworn in. So while Mrs. Persad-Bissessar was being driven to President's house to take the oath as Prime Minister, up until the time that she held up the Constitution in her hand to take the oath, Stuart Young was the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And the previous PNM administration was still the government of Trinidad and Tobago up until the time Kamla Persad-Bissessar read the words, right, of the oath, and up until the time that John Jeremy also took the oath, because the cabinet, the Prime Minister and the Attorney General constitutes the cabinet. Once those two people are sworn in, you have a new cabinet. So up until the time when they walked into President's house and they sat down and they were waiting for the start of the ceremony, Stuart Young was still the Prime Minister. The People's National Movement was still the government. Because an election was called and the results was declared, did not mean that the government of the day or that was in place at the time ceased to be the government. In the same way in the United States, where an election was held in November last year and Donald Trump won, and Joe Biden remained the president of the United States up until Donald Trump took the oath of office, up until the time that he held up the Bible or put his hand on the Bible or whatever it is and read the oath. Joe Biden remained the president. So that's just for the benefit of the fully dons. So stop talking nonsense about we didn't have a government in place and we had no prime minister. Rubbish. Stuart Young was the prime minister. And I don't know that the functions and operations of the government, meaning government agencies, ceases because an election has been declared and an outcome made. All right? So ease us up with that. Only to learn now that the young lady, in fact, would have purchased this unit since 2020. And what they were telling you that she signed or this arrangement was ironed out on the 30th of April. They rushed that before the new government was sworn in and so on. Is utter rubbish. What was done was an extension of the rent-to-own agreement. Right? So she has owned this unit 5 years now. 5 years she has been paying this rent. Okay, so just putting that out there for them. So I came across a video. Let me get this. But another one of the UNC faithful who seems is trying to use this whole issue to get the Prime Minister to notice him, because he ran for a seat, or not ran for a seat, you were screened for a seat and you didn't get through. The party, the UNC, won the election. All kind of unknowns were made senators, ministers in the office of ministers in the ministry of, were made parliamentary secretary. And you, who have been around for a while, you ain't get nothing. You're seeing board appointments being dished out here, there, and everywhere, all kind of plebs being put on state boards. And still, you ain't get nothing. So like you're trying to say, well, like the Prime Minister forget me? All right, let me do a video so she can remember I still exist, right? And I'm referring here to former Senator Damian Leyder. Yes, Mr. Leyder, who was a senator for a period of time in the last parliament. Mr. Leyder, who was married to former minister in the Ministry of Sport, former minister in the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, Stacey Roopnarine. So he had an interesting take on this whole development. Everybody figured they want to score a Hail Mary pass. So I want you all to take a listen to Mr. Leyder.
Trinidad and Tobago, and especially to the more than 100,000 citizens who are patiently waiting in line to get approval on HDC homes. Many of you would have seen and been in shock where you see on social media where Minister Anna Roberts, the Minister of Housing, Minister in the Ministry of Housing, exposed the fact that family members of the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, namely his wife, his son, and his daughter, were able to purchase government-subsidized $1 million HDC homes. Now, you would have seen back and forth between the Prime Minister, and you would have also seen a number of documents floating around social media, documents which I have here in my hand here now. And I took the opportunity, given that my mother, who was a real estate agent of 20 years, retired, would know what the cost of properties would be and the value of rentals would be. I took the opportunity to peruse these documents and see, really what was the mischief in this deal. And the one that stuck out for me in particular, let me turn to it, was the purchase of the property by Soleil Gonzalez, the daughter of Prime Minister Ralph Gonzalez, where she would have purchased one of these premium apartments at a cost of 1.3 million TT dollars. Now, this was the first thing that jumped out to me as a red flag. You see, this property, as the former Prime Minister had confirmed, is a very premium property. And it sits around the areas of West Moorings and Victoria Gardens. And for those who know West Moorings and Victoria Gardens will know that this is some of the most expensive real estate to either purchase or rent in Trinidad and Tobago. And when I looked at the cost of $1.3 million for this property, that stuck out to me as a red flag. Because a property in this area, of this nature, with security guards, gated security guards, swimming pool, covered parking, etc., a property like this would go for no less than $1.7 to $2 million. So that's the first thing that stuck out to me, that this was completely undervalued. But then I looked on to the deal that was actually entered into, which was a lease to purchase deal between Solis Gonzalez and the HDC, the then PNM HDC, by the way. And the deal that was entered into them was that she would lease the property for a period of 5 years at a rental rate of $2,750 per month for 5 years, to then have to pay the $1.3 million. That's where the second flag jumped out at me. Because there is no property, premium or otherwise, in that area of West Moorings and Victoria Gardens that would be even remotely close to $2,750 a month to lease. In fact, properties in that area would start at $5,000 and more for a one-bedroom in that area. Even an annex of a house in Westmoreland would rent for $5,000 and up. Even if you take into consideration rentals on the East-West Corridor, St. Augustine, Barataria, no respectable property there would rent for anything under $3,000. In fact, $3,500 would be the going rate for a rental property such as that. So to rent at $2,750 is unheard of. So that's the second flag that stood out to me. But when I looked further in the documents, and I'm turning to that now, I've actually noticed that this lease arrangement was rushed and signed on the 30th of April 2025, which was 2 days after the general election, where the then PNM government lost the general election. So the executive of the HEC, 2 days after an election, rushes when a prime minister has not even been sworn in as yet, Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar, where a cabinet has not been sworn in as yet, and where the new board of the HTC has not been sworn in as yet. The executive hurriedly went to sign a 5-year agreement with this Solis Gonzalez for this lease to own at $1.3 million. And let me tell you something, I went further and it got even worse. Because when Minister Anna Roberts had indicated the date in which this was signed, I looked and I realized that this was not a new agreement that was being signed on the 30th of April 2025, but rather this was an extension to an original agreement that was signed in 2020 for 5 years. So this Solis Gonzalez in 2020 signed a lease to own arrangement at $2,750 a month. And the HTC, with no government sworn in at this point, with the former PNM government being exiled out of governance, extends this young lady's lease to own by an additional 5 years. So this young lady, who is the daughter of a prime minister, who has family members in the mother and brother who are self-proclaimed real estate developers, who are renting properties to the Venezuelan government in Venezuela, this young lady, who is certainly not in need, as many other citizens in this country who can't afford to rent, who are living in their parents' homes still today, this young lady gets an extension and has 10 years at a peppercorn rental rate to pay this, to then have to come and pay at a price of $1.3 million, which is grossly below the value of that property in that area. That is unbelievable, because by 2030, that property, which would have been around 1.7 to 2 million when she entered into agreement, would be probably valued at around 2.5 or more in 2030. So this is unbelievable that this young lady has been given 10 years of this deal. I mean, I want to go even further, because they say that she's a student at UE. If she had to rent a dorm in UE and share a room with another student, a 2x4 room with another student, where she has to wake up in the morning and look across at a student on another bed, she'd be paying $1,900 a month in UE. But this young lady gets $1 million apartment at $2,750 for a period of 10 years, when she would then have to look for that $1.3 million to pay for this apartment. There are a lot of questions to be answered here. This is unbelievable. When thousands of citizens in this country cannot afford rent, cannot afford to purchase a home, or even if they could purchase a home, will struggle to pay a mortgage to buy a property at $1.3 million. Because I want to tell you this, a mortgage for $1.3 million, if you, the citizen, had to get a mortgage for $1.3 million for that apartment, you would have to pay from any of the various banks in Trinidad and Tobago, depending on the interest rate, you'd have to pay anywhere between $9,000 to $11,000 for a loan of $1.3 million, whether it is 15 or a 20-year loan. But the point is, you would have to pay at least $9,000 a month in mortgage to be able to purchase a property at $1.3 million. So this young lady gets a 10-year interest-free holiday, not having to go to the banks to find that money for $1.3 million for 10 years, pay a peppercorn rent, while citizens in this country continue to suffer, continue to struggle to get homes, and we wonder why the PNM is no longer in government and why they've been voted out. This smells of nepotism. This smells of PNM corruption. The executives at the HDC have a lot to answer to this deal. And in the upcoming days, I sense that Minister Daniel Roberts is going to expose more about this deal. So, Trinidad and Tobago, there's a reason why you put the United National Congress in government. You've put them there to serve the people. And that is exactly what we're doing by exposing the nepotism, exposing the corruption, exposing the unfair and inequitable treatment when it comes to the regular citizens of this country and the friends and family of former leaders of your former PNM government. Stay tuned. I suspect the Douglas have plenty more to hit you with.
You said a lot there, whole mouthful. So I have a few questions for former Senator Damian Leiter. So you quoted some figures there. You said a property of $1.3 million cost, the mortgage would be about $9,000 a month for a 15, 20-year mortgage. So I want to ask you a question, Senator Leiter, since you say your mommy is involved in real estate for how much years and retired and so on. When you all took the decision to spend an additional $452 million to upgrade Victoria Keys to luxury apartments, and you did a valuation and you saw what the prices would be, so I want to ask you, what was the price at which you all intended to sell these units once it was completed, when you all added the $452 million? Because when you came in 2010, Victoria Keys was all but finished, right? And the price based on what existed at that time, before you all spent an additional $452 million, based on the cost for construction of those apartments, $2,750 a month would not have been an unreasonable rent to ask. Because just lower down the road, Senator Leiter, just a few 100 feet down the road, next to the Four Roads police station, there's another apartment, HDC apartment development, right? Which is supposed to mirror what Victoria Keys was supposed to be before you all came in 2010. And that one, which is next door, it's called Shakonia Crescent, right next door to the Four Roads police station. You started off your discourse by telling us that properties in that particular area, that high-end area, you have Victoria Gardens right there and Starlight Shopping Plaza. In fact, Shakonia Crescent, which is an HDC development, is right across the road from Starlight Shopping Plaza. So if you're living in Victoria Keys and you want to get to Starlight Shopping Plaza and you have a car, it would take longer to get to Starlight than you would with Shakonia Crescent, which is HDC. You just walk out the gate and you cross the road and you're right there, right? Prime real estate, as you rightly said, in that particular area. Yeah, you know, properties in that area cost a lot of money. So you can't get any rental property in that area for less than $5,000 a month and all of that and so on. But yet still you have a whole HDC development right here, smack dab in the middle, next to the police station, opposite Starlight, which is HDC, low income, which is what Victoria Keys was supposed to be. But it's not because of anything the PNM did. It is because of what the People's Partnership did. So when you all spent an additional $452 million on top of the $200 million that the PNM spent to build not one, not two, but 3 apartment towers for $200 million, you all came in and spent $452 million additional dollars to upgrade this development and turn it into luxury apartments, right? Which included the construction of 2 penthouses, which is now being offered for sale at a cost of $4.15 million and the other one for $4.5 million. Since you all are so concerned about all of these people who are on the HDC list for so long and how many years, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago can't get an apartment, can't get an HDC unit, but you have these foreigners from St. Vincent and the Grenadines who have come and were able to purchase 3 of these units. Which low-income person that you are so concerned about who has been on this HDC list for over how many years, which one of them did you anticipate would be able to afford the $4.15 million and the $4.5 million penthouse, Mr. Leiter? Which low-income or middle-income family was that constructed for? I'm just asking that question. Because if you are telling us an apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment for $1.3 million would cost about $9,000 a month in mortgage, which is way above what anybody who would normally qualify for an HDC housing unit would be able to pay, then when you all upgraded this to luxury apartments, who exactly were you doing that for? Because you are telling us the average citizen who is on the HDC list can't afford $9,000 a month. The people who normally qualify for HDC housing make less than $9,000 a month, some of them. So you all didn't think about that when you upgraded these apartments? And what price were you planning to sell it for? I just ask you now, if you can't spend $652 million on 3 apartment towers and then sell it for peppercorn rates, could you? So what was the price you all were planning to sell it to the public, to offer it to these people? What price? Is it the same 1.3 million or the 1.6 or the 1.7, the figures that you keep calling? Are those the figures, Mr. Leiter? Who could afford that? I'm just asking that question, right? Now, as you said, the young lady, Solai, not Solis, Solai Gonzalez, would have purchased this unit, would have gotten a lease agreement in 2020. And the intention was that she would pay this $27.50 per month for 5 years. And then at the end of that 5 years, she would now go and get a mortgage to pay the original price of $1.3 million. So when we add what she would have paid for that 5 years, right? Notwithstanding that she would have paid $33,000 a year by 5 years, she still has to come and pay the $1.3 million. So she is in fact paying more than 1.3. And then, because she got an extension and she would now have rent to own for 10 years, and at the end of the 10 years, as you just said, she would still have to now come and approach the bank to get a mortgage for 1.3 million. So over the course of that 10 years, she would have paid, right, $330,000 in rent. And then she still has to come and get a mortgage for 1.3 million. So in fact, she would pay $1.63 million for this apartment, this 1-bedroom apartment. Right, Senator Leiter, right, going based on what you said, your figures. So 1.3 plus 10 years at $27.50 works out to $1.63 million, which is the market price. So there was no subsidy for her. None. Because she's paying the original price. Rent plus she still has that mortgage to pay for how many ever years. In addition to that, while you all keep harping on the $2,750 a month rent, what you are not telling the public is that in addition to that, she also has to pay $1,710 per month as HOA fees for the maintenance of the swimming pool, for the upkeep of the grounds, for the gym, the play park, all right, the clubhouse, the 24-hour security and the concierge service. Every month, in addition to $2,750, she has to find an additional $1,710. So it works out to almost $4,500 that she is paying, not just the $2,750. So again, I ask you the question. All these citizens that you, the 100,000 that you talk about who have been waiting for how many donkey years, could they afford $2,750 plus $1,710? I ask you that. So about $4,500 a month is what they would really be paying, not $2,750. My second question is, when the People's National Movement came in 2015, and they would have done an assessment of this development and realized what the People's Partnership did. And they said, listen, the cost of construction, the average cost of construction per unit. Now remember, we're looking at average here because it's one whole cost and we divide by perhaps the number of units and so on. but the 1-bedroom would cost less than the 2-bedroom and the 3-bedroom and the penthouse, obviously. But he is saying, and Anil is saying, that all of these units were subsidized. So it means that if the penthouse is going for $4.5 million and it is subsidized, it means it costs more than $5 million, more than $4.5 million to construct that penthouse, right? More than $5 million to construct it. Okay. 48 units were originally set aside for rent to own. 234 units were for mortgage, and the government kept, I think, 10 units for themselves to be able to house certain senior government officials. And by government officials, I don't just mean persons who may be members of government, because as you know, the Tobago representatives, Tobago East and Tobago West, were part of their compensation package as worked out by the Salaries Review Commission, is that when they come to Trinidad, obviously they need place to stay because they live in Tobago, but you cannot impose an additional cost on them when they have to come to Trinidad for sittings of Parliament, that they have to dip into their pocket to pay for accommodation while in Trinidad. So that is part of their compensation. So if the state can provide accommodation for them, then it means that they wouldn't have to pay them for that accommodation. All right? So I know that at one point in time, I think Shamfa Kojo and Ayanna Webster Roy would have been staying there. I think at one time the president of the Senate, or then vice president of the Senate, Nigel, can't remember, what's Nigel's last name? Slips me at the moment. I think at one point in time, he too used to stay there. All right? So that's part of the arrangement. 48 units were set aside for rent to own. What I would have liked Mr. Roberts to tell us is whether or not any of those other 48 units have been distributed via the rent to own methodology, and how much is each of those persons who access the rent to own, how much are they paying per month? Or is it that it's just Ms. Gonzalez alone who is paying this $2,750? And how did the HGC arrive at that figure? So is it that the rent for the 1-bedroom, given the fact taken into consideration that even after the 5-year period, that these people would be required to go and take a mortgage and pay the full. So there's no discounting. Based on what he said, the impression given is that there is no discounting for what you would have paid in rent against the value of what you're supposed to pay for the property. So 1.3 million is the price. Regardless of what you pay in rent for the 5 years, you're still required to pay us an additional 1.3 million for the property. So you're paying, at the end of the day, more than. And perhaps given that, taking that into consideration, would have informed the reason why you could charge that figure. Because the average citizen who would normally qualify for an HDC house, even after 5 years of rent to own, even if they're paying $2,750 or $3,000 or whatever, and still required to pay $1.3 million for the property, will understand that that is 5 years less that you have available for you for the mortgage. The shorter your mortgage tenure, the period of time that you're paying your mortgage, is the higher your installment would be. The longer, so if you have a 30-year mortgage, obviously your monthly installment would be less than if you have a 20-year mortgage or a 15-year mortgage, all right? Because you have less time to pay it off, so you have to pay more on a monthly basis. Now, this Miss Gonzalez is a young woman, all right? So I'm sure she could probably still qualify for the 30-year mortgage. But as I said, in doing the calculations, you would take into consideration at the end of the 5-year period of rental, you are still required to pay us the full amount. Right? So when we add what you would have paid in rent plus this full amount, it works out to a much greater figure. So we still benefit. Senator Leiter mentioned, or former Senator Leiter mentioned that this property, this 1-bedroom property, was heavily subsidized. So 1.6 million and 1.3 million, and that by 2030, Nigel De Freitas, thank you so much, Dexter, tweets. By 2030, this property that was sold to this young lady for 1.3 million, by 2030, given the area that it is in, it would now be worth about 2 million to 2.5 million. Right? That's what he said. We are in 2025. I have here an advertisement from the HDC for an open house that was held on October 24th and October 25th. They also have an open house this weekend. So I think today you could go down to Victoria Keys if you're interested and you have the money and you want to purchase one of those units. You could go down there now. They have an open house and you could go and take a look. What it says? Notice what I circled. See that figure there? 1 million. 1 million. Experience contemporary living at its finest and explore beautifully designed units starting from 1 million. But Senator Leiter just told you by 2030, this 1.3 or $1.6 million property, this one-bedroom apartment would be worth $2 to $2.5 million in 2030. For the last year, the HDC has been having open houses, and these same advertisements were saying, you know what? Units are starting from $1.4 million. 1.4 under the PNM. Now, over the last few months, they have reduced the price to 1 million. So in fact, you, Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer, and you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and the government of Trinidad and Tobago, it appears based on this is authentic. You could go on the HDC's Instagram page and you will see it there. I didn't make this up. It is there. You could go on their Facebook page. You could go on their website and you will see it. All right? It is there. So this $1 million apartment is what it's going for now. So perhaps Ms. Gonzalez should give up her apartment, as the UNC supporters are calling for. Give it back. And now make an attempt to buy it back. Because it will cost you less. Because in 2020, you entered into an agreement to pay 1.3 million. But somebody who is now coming after you today and is interested in purchasing same type of one-bedroom apartment will only have to pay $1 million, Ms. Gonzalez. So you are paying $300,000, well, $630,000 more than this person who will come now, who has the time to run down to Victoria Keys, like right now, no, and say, I'm interested in this $1 million apartment, this one-bedroom apartment, that Solai Gonzalez entered into agreement to pay 1.3 million for, that she's paying, she would have paid over $150,000 already in rent for. That doesn't factor into her mortgage, and she will pay another $150-something thousand in the next 5 years, and then still be required to pay 1.3, while I am only being asked to pay $1 million for the same apartment. Who knows? Maybe I might get the one right next door to her. And then we bounce up a day and we say, hey, how you going? Oh, you're Miss Gonzalez. How much you paid for your apartment? Well, when I bought it in 2020, it was 1.3, but then I paid rent for 10 years, so it worked out about 1.6 million. Oh, well, I bought mine in 2025 and I get it for $1 million. Hard luck for you. Hard luck for you. So it seems that this was a good deal, because anybody who is now seeking to purchase one of these one-bedroom units is going to pay a lot less than Ms. Gonzalez will pay. And so the government of Trinidad and Tobago has actually benefited from selling her this apartment. All right? Just want to put that out there. Now, in real estate, there's something called comparables, right? So for those of you who look at HGTV and these types of programs and so on, there's a program called My Lottery Dream Home, and you have other programs where they deal with selling houses and so on. Perhaps you've seen $1 million listings of New York on Bravo station. And so when a person is selling their home and they want to try and gauge, well, what price they're likely to get for their house, they would look for something similar in their neighborhood that might have sold recently, and they would look to see what price it was sold for so that they could have an idea as to what they should price their unit at. All right? Lower down the road, for those of us who know Diego Martin, Petit Valley, there's a development called West Hills. Similar design. Well, not similar design, but these apartments and so on. That is on Moncoko Road. So you have to go down to Petit Valley down there and by Majuba Crossroad and swing right, so, and then you go up in the back as if you want to go over Moncoko Road, the hills as they say, to get into Maraval proper. West Hills. West Hills has, just like Victoria Keys, it has swimming pool, security guard, clubhouse, gym, all of these amenities. Same thing that it has. All right? But when you look at the cost of an apartment in West Hills as compared to the cost of an apartment in Victoria Keys, it's chalk and cheese. The only thing Victoria Keys has on West Hills is that it has a view of the ocean. West Hills does not. But what West Hills has that Victoria Keys doesn't have is that they have shopping on the compound, meaning they have convenience store on the compound, they have TT Post on the compound, they have a small grocery, and a variety. You want to buy a little clothes, you want to, something to wear to go by the pool, all of these things. So if in the middle of the night, 10 o'clock in the night, 11 o'clock in the night, Massy closed, and you're feeling to cook something, you want a snack or something, you could just go downstairs. You don't need to leave the compound. Just go downstairs and it's right there. Victoria Keys does not have that. They don't have that. But a 3-bedroom in Victoria Keys would go for about $2.5 million. You can get a 3-bedroom apartment in West Hills for about between $1.7 to $1.9 million. Right? And I could tell you the fixtures in West Hills far better, superior to what is offered in Victoria Keys. When you look at for instance, the shower in Victoria Keys, the fittings, the fixtures is so basic as they come. I mean, you have people who have their own homes. I'm talking middle income, even probably just normal people have better fixtures in the shower than what exists in Victoria Keys. For somebody like me, I would know. When my sister was in the hospital and I was doing a little bit of house sitting, couple days and so on, and I didn't feel to drive all the way to Arima to come home, and I would just stay over there. The shower stall, and she had 2-bedroom unit. The shower stall was, for me, for a big guy like me, it was tight. Yes, I'm 6'3". Most people, when they meet me, they say, I didn't realize that you were so tall, because when you see me sitting here, you assume, yes, but I'm 6'3". All right. So the shower stall for me is like, even if you adjust the shower head, still can't work. So I had to be bending down and ducking so to shower. All right. So anybody purchasing one of these units in Victoria Keys, unless you're purchasing a unit that was currently owned or previously owned and the person sold it and they would have done their own thing to it, that is a complete gut job. The entirety of the inside of that, you have to do over it from the floor. The only thing good about these things is the kitchen, the size of the kitchen. So when you look at the cupboards and stuff, you're doing away with all of that. You're changing the flooring. You're changing everything. Right? Everything. The tiling and everything you're going to do over. So that is additional monies that you have to spend. And ask yourself, why after some 10 years, you still have over 100 and something units still available. I think about 130 something units still available for sale, including the 2 $4.5 million penthouses, which, just as this 1-bedroom has been reduced to $1 million, my understanding is that the penthouse has now been reduced from $4.5 to $3 million. A reduction, right, of 33%, from $4.5 to $3 million. Why is that, former Senator Leiter? So it's further subsidized, former Senator Leiter. How come nobody was purchasing these units? Senator Leiter, it's been there for 10 years. Anybody could have gone and buy it. They've been advertising through several real estate companies, Senator Leiter. Several. Go on My Bunch of Keys, go on Terra, go on Viridian Realty, any of these real estate websites, and you would see they have these apartments there for rent, for sale for years. But then Senator Roberts also tells us that you're not supposed to rent out HDC properties, right? Meaning if you purchase an HDC property, you're not supposed to rent it out because it's HDC properties are already for low-income people. And if you could afford to rent out your unit and live somewhere else, then it means that you didn't need that unit. But yet still there are several units in Victoria Keys available for rent. For rent for as much as $7,000 plus a month, because these people would have come in, they got in their unit, make it nice and fancy, make it all luxurious, put in all kind of thing, and they put in their furniture. So they're renting it to you fully furnished for $7,500, $8,000 a month, and you have people paying that. But since they want to give you the impression that Victoria Keys is supposed to operate under the same methodology as the normal HDC units, then everybody who owns a unit, who spent the money, took the mortgage and bought an apartment there, they need to be informed, hey, you're renting that apartment, you're not supposed to rent HDC apartments, we come in and take it back. Right? We're putting you out because the HDC rules say you're not supposed to rent. Can they do that, Senator Roberts, since these people paid their money and they have a deed of lease, or as the case may be, for their property? It's all over several. Just go on any of these real estate websites and you will see. So I don't understand. What's the issue? What is the big thing? And then you have Mrs. Prasad Bisesa coming out and say, well, Ralph Gonsalves is free to sue, and an investigation is taking place with respect to this property that was leased to his daughter on a rent-to-own basis. It's on the form. It is an option that is available. 48 units were set aside for rent-to-own. And my understanding is that over the last 5 years or so, because there have been no takers, despite having all of these open houses, people come in, they're viewing the units, and they are of the view it is not worth the price, and they're not purchasing it. But yet still the HDC has to find money to maintain these units, to maintain everything on the compound. And if the amount of tenants that you have or residents that you have there and the HOA fees that you're collecting is insufficient to meet these maintenance costs, it's costing HDC to still have an interest in this property. Because guess what? When all of these units are sold, whenever that happens, and the HDC exits itself from the situation, okay, if somebody wants to sell their unit after, you don't go through the HDC. You go through whatever is the normal process when somebody wants to sell their house. The HDC is only still there because there are still several units that have remained unsold that is under the ambit of the HDC. And their purpose right now through these open houses is to just get rid of all of that, and then the HDC could exit. Sayonara, so long, goodbye. So if you have a problem with your plumbing, you don't call the HDC. If you have a problem with your air conditioning, or you have a problem with the pool, you do not call the HDC. All right? You will not be calling the HDC because the HDC will no longer be there. But Senator Leiter made a very interesting point when he talked about properties in that area. It's high-end properties. That is prime real estate. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the crux of the matter as to why the UNC decided to spend $452 additional million to turn Victoria Keys into high-end luxury apartments. Because they were of the view Manning is a madman to take prime real estate in that area and bring in a set of poor people, low-income people. What the government should have done, as far as they're concerned, Manning and they should have been to sell that piece of land there to some private developer, so they could have put up towers like Bayside and Bayshore and this one lower down the road there, then the Renaissance, the big towers that basically out on the sea, down in Carenage. That is what Manning should have done, not to put housing there for poor people, low-income earners to come and live there. That is prime real estate. He's a madman. How could you give these built apartments there and give low-income earners such a beautiful sea view? You're crazy. That is the kind of thing that should be reserved for people who live in Goodwood Park. That is the UNC mindset. When you drive into Goodwood Park, well, to get into Goodwood Park, you need to know somebody inside it, right? You can't just drive up to the gate, security asks you who you're going to, and you drive up into the nice hills and you see all of these beautiful multi-million-dollar houses. It's like, wow, boy, this Trinidad. And you go up to the top and you see this beautiful sea view that they have here. So it is clear that was the drive, the thinking, the driving force behind the decision to spend all that money and turn Victoria Keys into upscale apartments, knowing that you will be putting it out of the reach of the same citizen that you're so concerned about, who has been waiting donkey years. Almost 300 apartments in that development that the Manning administration, the PNM Manning administration, wanted to give to low-income earners. And it was taken away from them, not by the PNM, but by the People's Partnership, who, as I told you all before, increased the qualifying salary for an HDC house or an HDC unit in Victoria Keys, well, overall, from $25,000 household income, total income, to $45,000. It took the PNM when they came back in 2015 to bring it back down to 25. So therefore, you rule out a lot of people who own or who earn over $25,000 a month. You need not apply. You cannot apply for an HDC house. But under the People's Partnership, up until the 7th of September 2015, if you were making $45,000 a month, between $25,000 and $45,000, you could qualify for an HDC home. They no longer qualify because the PNM fixed that. But they could not offer those units because the type of subsidy for those units to be affordable to the low income or the middle income, they would have had to sell an apartment that valued at 1.6, 1.7 million for about $750,000 to $850,000, half the price. And remember, the money that comes from this development goes to the HDC so that they could build other low-income housing in other parts of the country. But because those apartments are just sitting there and not earning any money, and it's costing the HDC money to maintain, the HDC needs the money. So the remaining apartments that they have there, based on the prices, the various prices for the 1-bedroom to the 3-bedroom, could fetch the HDC over $300 million that they desperately need to be able to build more housing and to upkeep and maintain existing housing developments. That is why they are having these open houses. But further to that, the last administration, PNM administration, in recognizing that these units were not being sold despite their best efforts, in spite of engaging the services of reputable real estate companies that have a reputation for selling units and houses fast, that in spite of that, and with all the open houses, people just were not buying, they decided to do an evaluation. And they brought in private valuator, Lyndon Scott, to come and do an evaluation of all of these properties to determine, are we pricing ourselves outside of the market based on what is being offered? Because when a man comes to Victoria Keys and he sees a 3-bedroom apartment for $2-point-something million, and he walks about and he looks at the fixtures inside and stuff, and then he goes lower down the road in Pitty Valley and he goes to West Hills and he looks at a 3-bedroom apartment offering him the same amenities that Victoria Keys is offering and more, and he is paying 1.7 to 1.9 million, as opposed to Victoria Keys 2.4 and 2.5, which one you think he will buy? Or he's seeing a 2-bedroom in Victoria Keys for 2-point-something million, but he could get a 3-bedroom in West Hills down the road, and I just use in West Hills and have other examples, but just lower down the road in the same upscale Diego Martin area in Pitty Valley, with easy access to all of these various amenities and so on, for less than what you're paying at Victoria Keys. It's a no-brainer. Which one do you think he will go for? Obviously, the West Hills, right? And there are other townhouses, private developments, just as West Hills, in that particular area where you could get 3-bedroom houses for less than what you would pay for a 2-bedroom in Victoria Keys. So nobody was buying it. It is just there. It's looking nice when you're driving into Diego Martin. But when you go in and you see what is being offered and the price, makes no sense. So Lyndon Scott came in on the advice of the former administration, who were eager to find out, well, what could they do to get these apartments moving, because it's costing the HDC too much money. And Mr. Scott would have done an evaluation to determine, and he came to the determination. You see, all they're paying that 1.3, all they're calling for that 1-bedroom, you only need to reduce that $1 million. You're not going to get more than $1 million, and even that is a stretch. When you do comparables in the same area and just down the road, what you could get, how much you would pay for a 1-bedroom and what you will get for a 1-bedroom as compared to what Victoria Keys is offering. And so they had to drop the price. And even then, at $1 million, they're still struggling, because this was from the 24th to the 25th of October. They have another open house yesterday, because people are not buying. Because in addition to paying this $1 million, as I said, you have to pay $1,710 a month in HOA fees. Add that onto your mortgage. So even if your mortgage is $6,000, $7,000, or $9,000, as Senator Leida said, add to that $1,710. So your mortgage payment is $9,000 a month plus $1,710. So you're paying almost $11,000 a month. That $1,710 is a deterrent for a lot of people. And so all the people who they're concerned about, who are on the waiting list, they would be thinking that too. Even if I could get a rent-to-own for $2,750, I can't afford that additional $1,710 a month, which is basically dead money. That doesn't contribute to the equity that you build in your home. That is just for you to be able to run by the pool and enjoy the pool and all of the other amenities. But that doesn't contribute to your equity, which is very important and a major consideration when you're purchasing property. But I want to ask Senator Roberts something. You're so concerned, Senator Roberts, about all of these citizens who have been waiting so long on the HDC list. 2010 to 2014, Senator Roberts, you were the Member of Parliament for Dabadi Omera, now Malaba Mausika. When you came in 2010, there were several HTC housing developments in the constituency of Dabba-Diomeara. Bellbird Crescent, Rosewood, where a senior cabinet minister now lives. And just across the road from Rosewood, you had Nepoyo Court, Senator Roberts. When you all came in 2010, Nepoyo Court, which was at that time supposed to house 94 HTC townhouses, Senator Roberts, was almost complete. It was about 90% complete, Senator Roberts. And you were the member of parliament. And you, for the 4 years that you were member of parliament for Dabba-Diomeara, presided over the abandonment and the vandalization of Nepoyo Court. Back then, every morning I used to walk around Larry Gomes Stadium. For those of you who know the area, you go down the dual carriageway and you reach down to the traffic light just after you pass the Larry Gomes Stadium. So go into the traffic lights that will either take you back onto the Malabar Road or into phase 4, or you could proceed lower down and you head and you go back out to Tumpuna Road, right? Nepoyo Court, right there. When they came into office in 2010, it was fenced around with galvanized fencing. Construction was well underway. As I said, most of the units, they were almost complete. 94 townhouses. They stopped construction at about 90% complete, allowing the vandals to come. So first they went with the fence, the galvanized fencing. That went first. I realized that nobody didn't do nothing. So then the vandals came and they went into the units and stole the fixtures inside the units and just left the bare shells. For 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days that the People's Partnership was in office, they allowed Nepoyo Court to lay abandon and allow the vandals to come in and do what they want. When all they had to do was to finish those units and distribute it, 94 families could have benefited from housing from since 2011, let's see, and could have been building equity in their units instead of paying rent, because I'm sure a lot of the people who live in Nepoyo Court now, which has been completed by the PNM and additional units have been constructed. When they came in 2015, they completed it. So it started under Manning, abandoned by the People's Partnership, and restarted and completed under the People's National Movement under Keith Rowley. All those people who are living there now, I am sure the majority, if not all of them, were renting before, spending dead money when they could have been paying a mortgage, or it was the rent or whatever, and building equity in the units. But this Senator Roberts, who was then MP Roberts, didn't care about that. He made no representation whatsoever for the People's Partnership government, of which he was a senior cabinet minister, to finish Nepoyo Court and allow an additional units, because the 200 and something that you denied the people in Victoria Keys, you could have replaced it with the 94 units in Nepoyo Court. You did nothing, but you're so care and concerned about these people. Every single person now who is living in Nepoyo Court that is finished, and I passed there just this morning to take a look at it again, right? On my way to the supermarket. Beautiful. During campaigning, when I went inside there, I always pass on the outskirts, but to actually go onto the compound and see, and I had an opportunity to glimpse inside some of these units. Beautiful. There's normally say what HTC units is, poorly constructed and stuff. When I saw some of these people, their front door open when I went to campaign and I take a peep inside, I was like, but what is this? This is HTC? Couldn't believe it. And the PNM finished it. The PNM built it. Verfort in St. James, down by the Western Cemetery, down by George Cabral Street there, right? When you pass the Western Cemetery and you bend the corner to head back into St. James Main Road proper, up on the hill, all those apartment units on top of the hill, that too was abandoned by the People's Partnership. They're so concerned about all these people who are on the waiting list. Abandoned that too. For 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days, construction stopped. People need housing. It took the PNM, when they came back in 2015, to complete those units, and I think they made it available for members of the protective services, the police, the defense force, fire, and so on. Those units, they are reserved for such persons, as far as I know. I think there was, if I recall, a couple of years ago, there was a fire in Rokrinook, in Maraval, where some young children died because the gate was locked. And we saw those gruesome pictures where the boy was lying down on the porch, clinging to the gate in pain. his body burnt, and the father was trying to run and see if he could save him, and the police had to hold them back and so on, because the children eventually died. I think that family, the mother, the father, and I think the children who survived, they were given a unit up inside it. But that was abandoned by the People's Partnership. Real Spring in Valsayn, same thing, abandoned by the People's Partnership. And I understand that there were housing developments in San Fernando as well that were also abandoned by the People's Partnership. They didn't finish it, but they so cared. You all could have finished all of those units because you were boasting then you had the highest energy revenues in the country's history. You could have finished it. So when I hear Senator Roberts coming out talk about 10 years and the PNM only built 4,500 units, and they have their social media mouthpieces coming and talking the same foolishness, understand that the money that the PNM had to take to finish Napoyo Court and to finish Beaufort and to finish Real Spring and the other areas that were abandoned by the People's Partnership. If the People's Partnership government had taken the 452 million that they spent to turn Victoria Keys into a luxury development, if they had used that money to finish Napoyo Court and finish Beaufort and finish Real Spring and the other areas that they abandoned, the PNM would not have had to come in 2015 and take the money that they used to finish those units. That money could have gone to constructing additional units at a time when revenue was much less than what the People's Partnership enjoyed. So if you want to talk about only 4,500 units, housing units they built, let us talk about how many they completed. Add that to the list. And you get well over 6,000 units. But the PPE, if they were concerned about that and had done what they were supposed to do when they had the money, the PNM would have been able, but have had more money available to them to build new units. And the 452 million additional that they spent on Victoria Keys, if the PNM was able to build those 3 towers for 200 million, and the UNC came in and spent a further 452 million, you know what it means? That we could have gotten 9 apartment buildings, right? Because if 200,000 giving you 3, the 452,000 that the UNC spent to turn it into, to put swimming pool and concierge service and gym and penthouse and all of that, that 452 could have give you another 3 by another 3. So 900 units could have been made available. So all that money that was spent on Victoria Keys by the People's Partnership could have given you over 900 units. Over 900, almost 1,000 families could have benefited from that money. Instead, none of them benefited because they priced the people out, the people for who the HDC is responsible. You price them out. And the money that you spent to put in luxury furnishings could have gone to construct further units. So don't come miss me with that BS about all your concern about the hundreds and thousands of people who waiting. You all contributed to that list because in 2010, you didn't have as many people on the list as you did now. Miss me with that. So Lyda and Roberts and the rest all you could rock so with that dotish talk. But we know what it is. You're all trying to create a distraction. Well, I'm waiting to see what distraction you're going to come with because so far this morning, so you failed miserably. Nobody want to hear about Faris tight pants. Nobody want to hear about Faris take a picture with 3 men in tight shirts. And we don't care about that. You see all that sort of salacious kind of, let me keep it podcast friendly, right? Yeah, you see that kind of bacchanal thing? We're not interested in that. This is what we're interested in. See this? We jump into that. So last week was good. This week is better. So you have 2 stories here. The live sport connection to the murder of Dina Sitahal. Story number 2, TTPS, high-level conspiracy to defraud the state. And in the face of all of this, the supporters of the UNC still talking about it's 10 years and 15 years, and why they're still talking about that, and why they're only bringing that up now, and how come they didn't lock up nobody? Well, today's story, for the first time, you know, Anil Roberts loves to say his name was never mentioned, and that the live sport report and the court decision with respect to the live sport report exonerated him and cleared him of any wrongdoing, when nothing could be further from the truth. The live sport report, as I said last week, that was quashed by the High Court, was quashed because Ashwin Creed, who was then the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Sports and Youth Affairs under Anil Roberts, and the other gentleman, when one reads in today's story the things that these men are accused of, and they are saying, we were not given an opportunity to respond to these accusations. So the audit committee, right, did their investigation, put together their report, and then they submitted their report to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, then Kamla Persad-Bissessar, came to the Parliament and published the contents of the report by reading it out in the Parliament. And when she did that, that action in and of itself gave a lifeline to Mr. Creed and all others who were mentioned in that report. For them to see the report was published and they were not given the opportunity to respond. They were denied natural justice, due process. And they took the report, the audit committee's report, to the court on that basis, so that the court can make a declaration, yes, these men were denied the opportunity to respond to what is in this report, these damning allegations. They were denied natural justice, due process, and the court said to the audit committee, go and do over the report. We're not telling you to go and do over any investigation. Whatever your findings are, that is your findings. We have not been asked to opine or to make a judgment on the substance of the findings of your investigation. What we are saying to you is to go and do over a new report. Keep what you currently have, but in the new report, include what Mr. Creed said and everybody else who is mentioned in this report, what they have to say based on your findings. The court never said that the findings of the audit committee was fraudulent, that it was false, it was fake, it was all lies. The court was never asked to make any determination on that matter. Only when somebody is charged and they come before the court, then they could challenge and say, well, this is not true, and the court will look at the evidence and make a determination. So when I hear Robert saying, oh, he was exonerated, and the court threw out the report, and because it was fraudulent, rubbish. The court did no such thing. No such thing. In fact, the former Minister of Finance, now the central bank governor, Larry Hawaii, stands by the substance of the report. Because when the media would have approached him, he said everything was above board. The audit committee did what they had to do. They followed the procedure in terms of doing their investigation and so on. Yes, you could make a case to say that maybe they didn't ask or present their findings to Mr. Creed and others. But as far as he is concerned, you see, everything in that report there is 100% legit. This is what the audit committee, which falls under the Ministry of Finance, this is what they found. Larry Hawaii. Now, clearly, the UNC have confidence in him because they bring him back as the central bank governor. Let us not forget, this is the same Larry Hawaii that they paid $11.625 million to leave First Citizens Bank as its CEO to take up the position of Minister of Finance. Don't forget that. All right? That is key. As I mentioned that, there was something I know that I was making the point when I mentioned Lyndon Scott, the evaluator for the Victoria Keys, who would have advised the last administration and the HDC to reduce the prices of these units, right? Given his assessment of what they could be sold for. And I wanted to make the point that the name Lyndon Scott might be familiar to some of you all, because Lyndon Scott is a evaluator who has been used by the HDC, who is trusted by the HDC for his competence in doing valuations. So if he tell you this is what is what, that is what it is. Lyndon Scott was also the evaluator that the HDC used between 2010 to 2015, or 2012 thereabout, to do the valuation for Eden Gardens, that piece of land that was purchased by a company called Point Lisas Park Limited for $5 million in 2012 or thereabouts, and later, 1 year later, was sold to the government for $175 million, right? After Lyndon Scott did his valuation and told the government this land is worth $52 million, nothing more, $52 million. The government went and purchased it for $175 million from this same Point Lisas Park Limited. And many of you who are regular listeners would have heard from it, even while I was on 91.9. I would have played the recording of that radio interview between Afra Raymond and Rennie B. Afra Raymond who was then with the JCC, right? And he made some rather damning allegations of wrongdoing, fraud of the highest order in respect of that transaction where the government paid 175 million for Eden Gardens valued at 52 million. Lyndon Scott. Same Lyndon Scott now, who is still a valuator for the HTC. So clearly he knows what he's doing. Inside the 8 million live sport heist. So last week, we heard about the 34 million with Adolphus Daniel. Now, what we learned last week as well, that there was an additional $8 million that Mr. Daniel had requested for a technology component to what his company was going to offer to the beneficiaries of the live sport program, the young at-risk youth, right? And that some bacchanal take place, and he hightail it with the 34 million, and he forget about that 8 million. But because this 8 additional million that he had requested for technology had been approved and allocated, and after months they realized, well, like he ain't coming back for that, according to Ruth Marchand, who was heavily involved in the live sport program, that $8 million was shared up amongst 8 people. And while the name is not called directly, there are certain references that are made in this article which clearly point to the then Minister of Sport being one of the beneficiaries of that 8 million. I shall now read. It's a lot to read. I ain't gonna read all of it. Well, you could go and buy your own copy, or you could go on Facebook, pull up Trinidad Express, and the story is there. You could read it for free. But I suggest you should get a copy just in case. Ruth Marchand's witness statement details rigged bids, fake companies, and cash payouts, including $1 million for a wedding. Whose wedding you think it was? Which senior government official got married in December of 2013? In her witness statement concerning the added 8 million sourced at the request of Adolphus Daniel, Ruth Marchand said, "We weren't seeing Daniel, so we," now for the benefit of the fully duns, you hear what she said? She is admitting to having committed a crime. She says we. When you read the story, she says that she too benefited from this $8 million. She is incriminating herself. So if all I want to talk nonsense about she's PNM and the PNM put her up to and she's trying to frame, she's framing herself too, because she's telling the police, I was part of this criminal enterprise. I benefited. I got $1 million+. I thief. Just like the rest of them, I too thief, to use local parlance. Who does that? Who goes to the police and says, yes, I thief money? Right? If the PNM had put her up to that, she ain't going and confess to make no jail. She could have implicated everybody else. But she's saying, we. See, me, Ruth Marchand, I benefited. I was one of the people who thief part of the $8 million. Right. She goes on to say, we weren't seeing Daniel, so we decided to take this money from the technology component and share the money among ourselves. This money was released as payment towards the technology component and not to Daniel specifically. He was supposed to invoice for it, but we took it from him. We weren't seeing him, so we thought he had gone. Marchand stated a collective agreement was struck up between herself and at least 6 other officials who worked in the live sport program, as well as a senior government official, to split up the $8 million during a closed-door meeting held in one of the officials' offices. The lunch was in the name-called office, so she called the senior government official, and it is a norm. It was a normal practice because of the sensitivity and the nature of discussions we were involved in. We had that open door policy to not use too much phone or to meet when persons were around. No text messages, emails, or record of this meeting took place. You wouldn't see that, and it was willful. Because you didn't want nobody coming back afterwards to turn state witness as she did. You don't want nobody coming to, next thing somebody send something to somebody and that get out. You know, like the voice recording between Fali and... Right. You will realize the trend was even with the gangs. They would come to the office and sit. So the gangs would come to the office. This is what Ruth Marchand is saying. But they like to tell you the PNM was in league with the gangs. So to avoid phones and messages with sensitive aspects of most of the kickbacks, we met in person in closed-door meetings. We met backdoor, similar to the gangs with certain senior officials and politicians, plural. Politicians, S, plural. So it wasn't just one. She said at that particular lunch meeting, they agreed on how the money would be split. Because it was 8 million, everybody agreed for $1 million each. 8 million is 8 persons. So we identified the 8 persons as a group of senior officials who were already part and parcel of the conspiracy to receive kickbacks in addition to the 8 million from other companies, except name called, who was a consultant. So he only received that 1 million and did not benefit from other components in the norm or in the form of kickbacks. So aside from the 8 million, they eat food otherwise in this program. This is what Ms. Marchand is saying, right? So it wasn't just this 8 million we eat from. We had a set of dummy companies all over the place, and this one invoicing, and then they get paid. They keep 10% of the proceeds, and the next 90% came to us. From 6 million to $400+ million of your taxpayers' money. And persons who were identified as being part of that racket are today back in government. Not thanks to the PNM. Well, thanks to the PNM supporters who chose not to go out and vote on April 28th. They included. She goes on. Marchand continued. Every person that benefited from that 8 million was backdoor sitting and agreed that this is how we would share the 8 million. Everybody was given $1 million each. A senior government official, whose name is called, was present during those meetings, and he knew up front through name of life sport official called, was being used as his disguised person to get the money out of the system. It was a norm for us to have open door, back door is what you call it. In more layman terms, meetings to conspire and to agree to certain kickbacks and other beneficial material which that benefited individuals. Material-wise, that benefited individuals. To speak backdoor and conspire off the phone, that was the main reason. So in cases like this, to avoid phone contact and emails, just to add the facilitation of these backdoor meetings were very easy and accessible because the senior government official, name called, his office and the name called were on the same floor adjacent to each other. So there are 3 persons, the senior government official, possibly the permanent secretary, and somebody else. All of their offices was on the same floor in a triangular. This is what she's saying. So anybody who listening who used to work in the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs building down on Abercrombie Street, which is now occupied, I think, by Udicott. If you all are familiar with that when it was the Ministry of Sport and you know this whose offices were in the triangle, maybe you could drop a line and let us know, right? Let us know. She goes on. Right. It was the norm for us to have open, right, just, okay, yeah. So most times, when I was needed, they called me upstairs and we would speak. In terms of kickbacks, the trend was to talk in person and agree. So every agreement, when we actually agree, would now guide me as the person in charge of the budget to facilitate the kickback. But at the same time, avoid the auditors, evade the auditors to avoid being red flagged. So the 8 million, at the same time, we agreed to facilitate the paperwork. Obviously, we're supposed to do a proper procurement, but we agreed to disguise and work around it. Fall Guy Cooper. Marchand said there was an attempt to have now deceased former Deputy Commissioner Winston Cooper, who had been hired as the live sport director, to become the fall guy in their hatched crime. It was attacked by name called, used, knowing the kickback that was going on to palm it off on other innocent persons by their signature. So by having Cooper or giving Cooper authority to sign or giving Cooper authority to sign off 50,000 to sign off on invoices, it takes him out as name called, the one that certified corrupt activities, and that was the problem. Cooper, however, never signed. He refused to sign off on many things as a former police officer. Everybody who knows Winston Cooper and so on, right? He was a street arrow, right? So he don't want no part of that. That is why he wasn't rehired. They did not renew his contract because of that, because he wasn't prepared to go along with their corrupt scheme. As I said before, what made it easy for us to entertain a lot of the kickbacks was the fact that the major players, apart from who benefited, were persons who were the only designated persons by law to approve any money at any time under $1 million. We did follow procedure. However, it stayed between the members of the group, it was easy to keep it between the major players and away from the eyes and ears of the implementation committee, the CEO of the sports company, as he blindly signed everything. He had to sign because he contracted the Central Tenders Board, who was never approached, ever. I am the one who did the paperwork and filed it. So each person submitted to me their favored company, who they know was a trustee, who they know they would then have gotten their million. That is how it worked. Companies submitted, some were relatives of the beneficiaries, some were advisors, some were their own directors. And you would realize for each of them, some of the companies were actually registered maybe a day or two before they received the job and actually collected the check. Right? I wonder why. There was a certain man who is a minister, a government minister now. He and his mother opened a business in 2011 and got millions of dollars in contracts. In fact, if memory serves me correctly, they got over $17 million in contracts between 2011 and 2015. That individual, who, based on records obtained by Mark Bassant, who is also the author of this story, would have paid 2 checks to then Prime Minister Kamla Prasad Bisesa, totaling $135,000. And he can't remember why he gave her that money. $135,000. Every time I speak of this, I tell you, if I lend somebody $500, I could remember what I lent it to you for. Even if it's years later, I remember why I gave you that. So $135,000 to the Prime Minister, and you can't remember? Okay. Them things has happened. I guess in the US. I continue. She goes on to say, Marchand said she engineered a particular company for herself and another senior official within LiveSport and used a couple who were her friends to create that company to siphon the money out of LiveSport. I wonder if that was Dustbin Divers. I just asking. I don't know. That company in particular, I know, was created just for that purpose because she was using other companies prior to that. Also, Name Called, who was a senior official in the LiveSport program, was a partner to a company with his family. It was one of the companies used for and registered deliberately to get money out of the LiveSport system and was used for other components. Marchand said this senior LiveSport official registered his own company while he was still on the job, a clear breach of procedure since the company never pre-qualified. So he just opened a company and say, invoice, payment. She described him as the engine room of the fraud, orchestrating bid rigging and corruption from inside the program. He assisted with the procurement and manipulation we used on the file. So our next point to facilitate the normal procedure with the 3 quotes where the lowest bidder gets awarded the contract. All 6 companies were done in the form of bid rigging, which means family and friends and associate companies were used against the original company highlighted to receive the million. So the other 2 companies were deliberately inserted as bidders to be a little under, and each company was guaranteed a commission of 10%, but negotiation was done by each person. For example, Name Called and she already had a rapport where she assisted long before LiveSport. So in other words, we have a particular service that we need, or we create a service, right? And then we get 3 companies, people who we know. So my friend, my cousin, sister-in-law, you have a company, you have a company, you have a company. Now to make this thing look legit, what we had to do, we using the 3-quote system. So Jane, I want a quote from you. Jack, I want a quote from you. Paul, I want a quote from you. But Paul, you win in the bid, right? But here's the budget we set aside for that is $3 million. All right. So to make it look legit, you will bid 2.5. Jane, you will bid 3.2. Jack, you will bid 3.1. So Paul will be the lowest bidder and Paul will get through. Right? So Paul will get the money. He ain't doing nothing because we don't really need this service. We just created something. All right? So we'll give Paul the money, but Paul is just a pass-through. So when he get the 2.5 million, he'll take 10%, 250,000, and the next 2.25 million, he will give it to me, and I will give, well, Jane, you will get a little thing for being a willing participant, and you will get a little thing for being a willing participant, and the next 2 million or whatever is for me and he, the boss man. That's how it works here. Bid rigging. So we create a service, but we don't really need that. All we need is 3 companies to come and bid. So we could say we use the 3-code system, and the man who bid the lowest, he win, and he get the money, right? But we don't check to see if what was supposed to be done was actually done. That's basically what she's telling me. She goes on to say she would have gotten 10%, the rest of the cash was given back. My $1 million she kept. And with name of the senior government official called, she would have given him the cash, not directly, but through me. The next company, for example, was the same format. The bid rigging, the sub-companies were friends and family. Name called, where 1 million went to, name called, and another 1 million went to the senior government official, where he told me that around that time was his wedding. Around that time, he, the senior government official, did receive his cash from the name of the senior life sport official about a week before his wedding. Who got married in while the People's, but senior government official got married while the People's Partnership was in government. Money in brown envelopes. Marchand said previously that the senior government official had confronted her about the $1 million owed to him while she was exercising at the National Stadium one Saturday morning. Marchand said she assumed the person who had cashed the check on his behalf had already given the money to him. So it seemed that the senior government official, whose name is called, was not aware that the check was already cashed, as name called did not inform him. So he became annoyed, and in front of me, he called, name called, and asked him to come down to the stadium now, and he put down the phone. When name call came, I went back and was running. Name called saw me, and he asked why the senior government official wanted to see him. So I told him that you collected the money and it is on the basis that he wants to see you. So while I was running, I saw them talking obviously about the money. Marchand said since it was Saturday, the senior government official contacted her thereafter and told her the exchange of the $1 million would happen on Monday. Kickback conspiracy. To continue this cloak and dagger operation, Marchand said it was extremely imperative they maintain backdoor meetings. In more layman's terms, meetings to conspire and agree to certain kickbacks and to other beneficial material-wise that benefited individuals. To speak backdoor and conspire on the phone, off the phone, that was the main reason. So in cases like this, to avoid phone contact and emails. So here is one. Marchand said she devised a plan to conceal her money by telling her friend who owned the company that she ran the money through to purchase a condo in Diego Martin. She eventually bought a condo to hide my part of the money. This condo was situated on Mohammed Drive, Diego Martin, I think. She handled everything for me. I think the condo ended up later in her name and she paid $1 million for it. I developed a relationship with the daughter of a senior life sport official. So apparently Miss Marchand is a lesbian. And she needed a house. So I gave her the condo and spoke to my friend who had bought the condo for me to organize it. But what his daughter wanted was the money. So the condo was sold and the money was handed over to his daughter. And the sale happened just before Carnival 2017. She added that her female friend and husband had done similar kickbacks in the past. She has already had previous similar kickback opportunities, not only through me and Live Sport, but within the bowels of the ministry by other senior officials. She accepted any type of goods and services and accepted 10% of the proceeds without providing any of the goods and services. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it was Live Sport, whether it was the rural program, whether it was the equipment through the ministry and other senior officials. Her thing was 10%, she accepted 10% commission. So just based on this paragraph here alone, we see that bubble and corruption was taking place not just through the Live Sport, because here what she says, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it was Live Sport, whether it was the rural program, whether it was equipment through the ministry and other senior officials, her thing was 10%. She accepted 10% commission. So they had somebody, a bag of money person, who they were just siphoning things through, aside from Live Sport, other activities taking place, procurement taking place in the ministry, bubble. And this person was the go-to. Right? She was the strainer. The other 90% was given back in cash to facilitate kickbacks to the persons who she was fronting for. Throughout the entire Live Sport, the senior government official name called and other heads within the ministry, the deceased Dave Bob knew of her with regards to kickbacks long before live sport. It was not new. Kickbacks long before live sport. Well, I hear that? Long before live sport, kickback taking place in that ministry. Thieving. How much money did this senior government official really get? So it wasn't just live sport alone that they were using to thief. You all remember it had another program called Hoop of Life? That when Gary Griffith became Minister of National Security and he did his checks and he saw what was going on and he took control of it. Remember? $70-something million that was spent on Hoop of Life. Don't forget that. Where they gave $10 million allegedly to Shaquille O'Neal to lift up Mrs. Prasad so she could dunk a ball. Millions of dollars were spent to rent high-end vehicles for the directors of the program. The contractors, some of whom had criminal backgrounds. Remember that? Gary Griffith told us about that. Perhaps next week we will delve into that a little bit. But we continue. Referring to the business arrangement she had with the couple for her and another live sport official, Marchand said the deal was that she submit invoices and receive 10% of the total figure. Name of the senior live sport official called and I would divide the rest. She was guaranteed 10% of the check figure. She cashed the check and gave name of the senior live sport official called his share of the cash to me. And I gave it to him and she kept my share in her account for me. Marchand told the police about the senior government official who collected his $1 million to use at his wedding. He invited all them gang members to his wedding. And from what I understand is that they went up to the venue of the wedding named with heavy cash. So is it that these gang members brought cash to the senior government officials as gifts? Because remember, some of them were receiving kickbacks. They were receiving services. Several of them are now in prison. Who was receiving money for tent and who was receiving money for cleaning and who received money for catering and all this thing. 58 million of the $400+ million was spent on catering. Who received $92,000 a month to do publications and to do interviews with the beneficiaries or the participants in the program for them to see that the program was so great and all of that. All these things. You all remember Mr. Warner talk about that in 2014, 2015 in the parliament when they brought the motion of censure against the then Minister of Sport. Jack Warner had documents that he got from Ruth Marchand. Don't forget, Ruth came to Mr. Warner first, seeking help to go into hiding because she feared for her life. Remember, there was a gentleman by the name of Tallman who got killed in his house. He was linked to Ruth. She came to Mr. Warner. We won 91.9 at the time under the Sunshine Hour. And Mr. Warner used to be feeding us these documents to come on Sunshine Hour and talk about it. Do you all remember? Okay. She goes on to say, Marchand revealed that the senior live sport official who was termed the engine room for stimulating the fraud purchased a home and other things with his money. When he got his money, I am aware that he went and invested in some house in Point Fortin and invest in and other stuff. So when audit came and questions about the whereabouts of the things on his invoice, name called had to end up supplying some of these items as damage control because he had no money left. So you supply an invoice for certain things, but you know you had no intentions of providing it. You just provide an invoice so you could get paid. And then when the audit committee came to audit now and they do their sampling because they say, well, okay, we see an invoice here for XYZ that this person was supposed to provide. Can we see it? Where is it? So they had to call him now and say, hey, boy, the auditor's coming on. And remember, you were supposed to provide a waka and you were supposed to provide a lawnmower. And they're asking to see the waka and the lawnmower. What's going on? You better find some money and go and buy a waka and a lawnmower quick so we could show it to them. Right? So they say, well, okay. But you know what I want to ask? The UNC supporters last year, was it? All of a sudden became aware of something called the Auditor General's report. They didn't know our Auditor General's report existed before 2024 when you had this whole debacle with the $2.6 billion understatement in revenue. And so everything is the Auditor General and the Auditor General say, the Auditor General spoke about this. All this fraud that take place, all is so concerned, 2.6 billion missing. But look what we're hearing about now. While we thought it was just live sport alone, now we're understanding that even before live sport came into being, money was being stolen in the millions. We continue. In 2014, a senior live sport official brought in another man who also received generous kickbacks. His name called. Told me that we need to compensate name called with something extra because he was helping us clean up things to satisfy the auditors. He got money from this invoice, and I know he bought a fishing boat, which he had working on off Blanchisseur's coast, and I got this information from him directly. She said another man, a former soldier who worked at Live Sport, also received a hefty payout using a company he created and several others. Marchand said none of the items here, nothing was ever delivered. There was no scope of works because the agreement was just a submission of companies to get $1 million out per person. So this is what you see in here. The content and the goods listed is just to satisfy the procedure with regards to passing an invoice taking into account the money value. To sum up the 1 million, that is all it is, nothing was received. Marchand said they were able to flawlessly execute the ghost payments. It was normal after she was set up with the automated clearinghouse system that made it a lot easier for us to evade the Ministry of Sports and the government procedure with respect to processing vouchers and checks. So no more check. Send in your invoice, you bring your bank account information and so on, we verify it, and the money going straight from the ministry account to your bank account, so you don't have to go in the bank with no check and all this set of trouble and all this madness. She goes on to see all 6 company names for the check, the names of the checks, the names of the company on the invoices, and each invoice, all it needed in terms of a signature to print to pass. All it required, that is the invoice, was signatures from name of the Live Sport employee called as goods received and whoever was the Live Sport senior official, which was in the case of the 8 million. So we collected the invoices and walked it to name of Live Sport employee called to bypass. All she had to do was to get the 6 companies' name, type it into the system. She waits. The only other stage is I, Ruth Marchand, now, and name called senior Live Sport official would block it. Not block, but confirm it on my timing with a monthly memo that would have gone from name of the senior Live Sport official to release the funds. And so once the guy signs, because he is guided by senior Live Sport official in everything, and once he signs off, he releases with the bank to release the money online into the sports company account, and there is where the drawdowns now it confirmed to take place. Next week Sunday, the multi-million-dollar schemes, the gangs, and how Live Sport was bled dry. So we wait to see next week. But let's see what Mr. Roberts is going to come with. Give me 1 sec. Let me just check Douglas politics here, right? Let's see. Right. Nope, nothing addressing that. 12 minutes ago, he posts up a picture or a video showing Stuart Young and Dr. Rowley on the night of the election when it was realized that the PNM had lost the election. And the caption is, "This is the look on the faces of evil when you work hard and honestly to defeat pathological liars, corrupt thieves, nepotistic oppressors, and a cartel of corrupt collusion. When you bring about the collapse of nepotism, elitism, and greed, the joy you feel is unimaginable, indescribable, and incredible. Work hard till the very end. Every vote counts. Be vigilant. Go brave. Freedom is worth the sacrifice, whether 9.5 years, 25 years, or over 69 years. If that isn't the epitome of irony. You hear all them things you talk about there? Pathological liars, corrupt thieves, nepotistic oppressors, and a cartel of corrupt collusion. If that is not what I just read there from Ruth Marchand, a cartel of corrupt collusion, right? An indirect reference is made to this man. And up to now, he, who normally would jump out himself and attack this one and attack that one, for the second week in a row, has said nothing about what is being published. You know why he would say nothing? Because he doesn't know what other information the Express has, what hardcore evidence the Express has. And if he jumps out himself to say anything, and then next week they come and they drop a mark, bust the mark, And he realized, well, hey, last week I said so and so, and now they come with the evidence. What is he to do? So perhaps his attorneys are advising him to stay quiet, or maybe, just maybe. But we'll talk about a particular attorney next week who would have represented, I believe, Mr. Creed and others in the court matter where they sought to challenge the live sport report. And the representations being made by that attorney to try and claim or give the impression that the court exonerated Mr. Roberts when nothing of the sort took place. Right? Nothing of the sort took place. The court never did any such things. But as far as we understand, this matter is still supposed to be under investigation. Or is it? That's not. Let me get this here. I reference an article dated 9th of February 2025, which is of concern to me. A Guardian newspaper article entitled, "Despite $1 billion spent, investigations into EMBD and live sport shelved." The police investigation into the EMBD and live sport, which were being led by British investigator Kate McMahon, have been shelved. Guardian Media was told that despite the work by McMahon's team being close to completion, it has been put on pause. McMahon's team was contracted and funded by the government and worked alongside the TTPS through the ACIB, which is now under the Office of the Attorney General, much to the chagrin of a lot of people, on several police investigations. McMahon's team also used Ed Jenkins, King's Counsel, for legal guidance in the build-out of the cases. The work fell largely under the ambit of former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith. Guardian Media was told that during and after Griffith's departure, McMahon's work was being stymied and stalled by the TTPS as requests for warrants to be executed were not completed. There seems to be a lack of responsibility toward completing it, the source said. An informed source explained that the evidence gathered can still be used provided it meets the required threshold, and the work can be completed if there is a commitment to do so. Thus far, it has been reported that McMahon's team collected $50 million in fees. The EMBD and live sport matters were two high-profile corruption matters which the People's National Movement campaigned on against the People's Partnership government. Collectively, the misuse of money in those two matters amounted to over $1 billion in taxpayers' money. So between EMBD, for which Munilal now finds himself the subject of a civil suit, and live sport, that's over $1 billion in your taxpayers' money that jump up in steel band. But the supporters are the fully duns, not interested in that. An informed source, right. The TTPS could not immediately provide an update on this matter. So they talk about the EMBD matter. This is Kate Mahon they're referring to. She added that there was reasonable grounds to suspect criminal behavior. McMahon also pointed out to a third matter has also been considered, and we wish to execute a search soon on, name called, who is central to our investigation with the ACIB. This is an important matter of public policy, and we urge that on the evidence as it stands, there are reasonable grounds to suspect criminal behavior and warrant a search. This is McMahon writing to the TTPS. McMahon noted that with a search warrant under Section 5(1) of the Indictable Offences Act, there is a general authority granted to a police officer to search specified premises in accordance with a validly issued search warrant under this section. She said once the magistrate was satisfied that the place in question to search may have evidence as the commission of any such offense, the DPP's permission is not needed. And she said she was optimistic that the DPP may see it fit to advance the cases we have put before him. The UK firm partner advised that unless the warrant was particularly tricky or difficult, the officers should be encouraged to A, not go to the DPP for assistance with routine policing, and B, if they do have concerns or need help, they use the TTPS legal department. With the criminal aspect on hold pending police investigation, the EMBD has sought to retrieve taxpayers' dollars through civil cases called the cartel claim. It has live sport. It has been 10 years since the controversial live sport program ended, and no one has yet been held accountable. In a 2020 police status report on the matter, the TTPS said it had obtained in excess of 25 production orders against individuals and banking institutions and interviewed many witnesses, which has generated valuable new evidence in support of the allegations. Evidence, not information, evidence. The new evidence has uncovered clear bribes paid to public officials in return for favors and large kickbacks to high-level public officials who are alleged to be at the forefront of the corruption, the document said. This is the police document, the TTPS document. It is alleged that a number of persons from the Ministry of Sport, the sports company of TNT, and contractor companies associated with the delivery of the live sport program were involved in various conspiracies to misappropriate funds allocated to the program for their own use and benefit. A total sum of $349,500,000 was allocated to live sport between 2012 and 14, funded through a combination of budgetary allocations. A significant portion of those funds are alleged to have been misappropriated by many individuals at all levels of the program. This is the TTPS document saying this. This includes a number of high-ranking public officials allegedly tunneling millions of dollars out of the program to purchase real estate, boats, vehicles, and to fund weddings, among other things. To fund weddings, this is the Guardian saying that. This is the Express, and I just read for you. Whose wedding? One. Google it and see which senior government official got married in December of 2013 and is today divorced. That wedding didn't last as long as the Red House fire. I wonder why. It noted that the police investigation began in 2015 and that one suspect has been assisting the TTPS with the investigation, providing key information about how the program was manipulated to enable so many individuals to obtain personal benefits to the detriment of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. A 2014 audit done by the Ministry of Finance's Central Audit Committee revealed that the program had been riddled with financial irregularities, had coordinators with criminal backgrounds, massive fraud, millions misspent, ghost center, ghost participants, improper procurement, and there were major thefts of state funds. This is what the audit said. While millions were lost in padded invoice to contractors, the $34 million payment to educator Adolphus Daniel to teach numeracy and technology to the people in the program was the single biggest payout of the program for no work. In August last year, High Court Judge Eleanor Donaldson Honeywell upheld the Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago lawsuit with Daniel's company, eBeam Interact Limited, and ordered it to repay almost $30 million. You know what the outcome of that was. Then Sports Minister Anil Roberts subsequently resigned. No, the judgment in that case is still pending. When she laid the report in Parliament, then former Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar said she had forwarded a copy of it to the DPP, the Commissioner of Police, the Integrity Commission, and head of the Public Service. So she clearly was convinced that there was significant wrongdoing in this live sport program. But Roberts will tell you everything was above board, and all that you're hearing was lies, PNM propaganda. All that is the PNM make up all of that. That's Emailgate 2.0. Nothing that you heard about live sport is true. Then Sports Minister Anil Roberts subsequently resigned from cabinet and as Dabadi O'Meara MP on the 31st of July 2014. At that time, former live sport director Cornelius Price had described the audit as sloppy. But former Finance Minister Larry Hawaii, under whose remit the audit was undertaken, had responded, "I am not aware of the context in which the allegation that the audit was sloppy is being made, but all of the supporting documentation is available to support the various statements that were made in the audit." He said, "I expect that a lot of allegations will be made by several persons or various persons associated with the program in a direct or indirect attempt to try to prove their innocence or to drag as many persons through the mud with them as possible. But the Ministry of Finance and the Economy stands by the results of the audit and the professionalism of the senior officer of the ministry and its overall position in this matter." There's Larry Hawaii, the $11.625 million Minister of Finance, telling you he stands by the audit. He stands by it and the professionalism in which it was conducted. They clearly had confidence in him because they bring him back as the central bank governor. Today he's making about 3 or 4 times what he was making as Minister of Finance. Right? But Persad-Bissessar saw it fit to bring him back. Roberts, that is. But there's another story from audit to courtroom. There's a story that talks about Dinasita Hall. And again, how money was requested by certain people. The day before Dinasita Hall was murdered, a certain amount of money was requested by certain individuals to rent vehicles. Certain vehicles which is alleged may have been used in the commission of that murder. I just reading what is here. Live sport connection. All right. I'll just read that part. The TTPS document further added in a statement given by Ruth Marchand dated the 10th of July 2014. She stated, the Monday before Dina Sitahal was killed, name of a person questioned afterwards by police in connection with the killing came to me and told me that the team needed 200,000 urgently and that the senior government official, name called, sent him. Who is this senior government official to whom reference is constantly being made? They wanted it the next day. I told them I would have to talk to the name of the senior life support official to see what could have been done to accommodate them. When name called of the senior life support official spoke to me, we organized a check for them from a maintenance company name called, for 200,000, and she, name called, collected the check and changed it. She gave it to me, and I gave it to the name of the person questioned by police afterwards in connection with the killing at the ministry on Friday around lunchtime. He then went to his phone and was talking about rentals for 6 vehicles. He asked me for an additional $9,000 and asked me to call the name of the rental company. I didn't call and I didn't give him the extra money. He also said that the money was for name of the senior government official. Marchand is now under police protection. It's interesting. Certain individuals has nothing to say on that. Instead, pulling up old videos from months ago, the night of the election, showing you Stuart Young face and Rohan Sinaran face and Dr. Rowley face and all of that. Distractions. Because people looking to see, they come in on his page, let me see what he's saying. What has he to say about this? Meanwhile, as we started off with the HDC, it has been reported that several persons were fired from the HDC yesterday over the course of the last few days. 59 workers of the Housing Development Corporation will not have their contracts renewed. This was confirmed by HDC Chairman Feroz Khan after social media reports began circulating yesterday that the HDC construction company had fired 90% of its staff. According to the social media reports, that amounted to 140 workers. But in a telephone interview with TV6 News yesterday, Khan dismissed those numbers but confirmed the contracts of 59 workers had expired and were not renewed. He cited an unsustainable monthly payroll of over 15 million, saying the government subvention stands at only 2.7 million. Yeah, well, obviously, the HDC is supposed to be making money. Khan said the corporation is under pressure to cut costs to maintain operations and construct houses, so we've got to become more efficient in terms of the government's resources. The HDC has 765 people on its payroll, and the HDC has a responsibility to ensure some level of efficiency in its operation. We get a small subvention from the government for salaries and operating expenses of 2.7 million, and the payroll is in excess of 15. As a result, we have to reduce the expense levels so that we can ensure the sustainability of the HDC and our ability to continue building houses. We waited until those contracts expired and we did not renew them. Khan further explained that the HDC's decision to split the organization into 4 entities, including the Construction Company Limited, Asset Management Company Limited, which is the company managing Victoria Keys, Facilities Estate Management Company Limited, FENCOL, was meant to improve efficiency. Instead, the move backfired. Khan said the construction company, which initially had 15 approved positions, has now expanded to 68 approved positions. Of the 59 workers at the HDC Corporation whose contracts will not be renewed, 25 are attached to the Construction Company Limited. So there's a video circulating for the day when David Lee and Anil Roberts, their first day on the job at the ministry. I remember Philip Alexander, he came on after. And in that video, you see where the staff of the HDC lined off in the corridor, man, and they started to clap. Hey, yes, morning, yes, finally Deliverance Day has come. And one woman started to sing some hymn. Right? They're happy. They hear them, and Roberts, morning. And they say, good morning, Mr. Roberts. And he says, Mr. Roberts is my father. And they're happy, man. Yes, the oppressors, the PNM, gone. Gone. The UNC is here, brand new day. Sure, plenty of them whose contracts were not renewed. A lot of them were probably standing in the corridor that day. When they went to the UNC Monday Night Forum meeting where the president of the PSA, Felicia Thomas, told them, hey, the PNM want to fire 500 all year. Yes, all you had to vote for the UNC, get rid of the PNM. You work on the line, your job on the line. 6 months later, 59 of them gone home. Well, there have been others as well. And it is the intention of the HDC to all those 3 special purpose companies that I mentioned, they intend to shut down all 3 companies, right? So who they don't absorb into the mainstream will be going home. But they had a big thing the other day, right? Employment TT or employee TT. We have so many positions and the establishment come, apply. Maybe if you all had told these people that you were not going to renew their contracts, they might have gone and applied for these jobs. But the window has closed. They cannot apply. And they're thinking they had a job. And they're thinking, well, hey, we good to go. Now they're unemployed. The employee TT window has closed because I understand they're now starting the process of doing the interviews. So these 59 people plus whoever else is going to be fired in the coming weeks or days have no work. Christmas right around the corner. Who is the Grinch? And they say Rowley was the Grinch. So add to that all the CPEP, URP, forestry workers who are also unemployed, who are looking for work, and for whom Christmas this year is going to be very bleak. Because when you have tens of thousands of people looking for the same jobs that don't exist, right? But where Felicia? Remember you tell the people that the PNM was going to fire them, right? So they need to vote UNC. When UNC wins, everybody wins. And they went and they voted UNC, and UNC is in power now. And now they're out of a job. You driving brand new BMW, so I heard. Is that true? Well, I know when Watson came in as PSA president, that's what he did. He bought a brand new BMW 5 Series. I think it was PCP 85. And then he upgraded to the Mercedes. And then when the Mercedes got in the accident on Arapita Avenue, he upgraded to the Range Rover, which he passed on to Leroy Batiste when he stepped down to become the THA assemblyman. Something I'm sure he regrets to this day because of where he is now. So all the big money, all the promises that Leroy made him, the arrangements they made, and then he come and say Leroy betray him. All right? One time for you to get his pension now, Leroy blank him. Nothing for you, Watson. Salt. All right? All your work you give up in Wasan, all them kind of thing. Pressure. You have to take it to court, and the court tell you, salt. Nothing for you. So Leroy betray you, the court blank you, and now you find yourself in the position that you are in, that after April 28th, had to come in the public domain to beg. Well, you didn't come in the public domain. You asked the Prime Minister for a job in private, and she came on national television and told the whole of Trinidad and Tobago that you asked her for a job. And of course, having no shame, maybe I needed a job. You came and said, well, yes, and I asked the Prime Minister, and she didn't respond to you yet. And clearly she still hasn't responded to you because you ain't get no work yet. You go do by Watson. That's how it is go. But everybody now prepared to bend the knee. Because with all of this, by now, right, it would have been a talking point. But it's to see how the supporters of the Yellow Party tripping over themselves in the comments on social media, on Facebook in particular, how they're tripping over themselves to try and dismiss this. No, you're going back, that happened 10 years ago. But these same people want to go back 5 and 6 decades to the 1970s to talk about O'Halloran and Privat and Desmond Carty. Carty say all are we thief, and O'Halloran and the buildings in Canada and so on. They could go back 60 years, 50 and 60 years, but we mustn't go back 10 years. Don't talk about life sport. The hypocrisy. They had plenty to say when revelations were being made about Rhoda Barrett, and Rhoda Barrett got $3-something million over, I think, a 7 or 8 year period, right? Working for $30,000 a month. That was a big story. Fraud, call the police. Kareem Marcel, he had a CPEP contract for $2 million. Call the police. Kareem Marcel, he get a HDC house. Nepotism, fraud, call the police. But last week, article comes out, Philip Watts, the Minister of Sport, would have received some $17 million in contracts. That's not a story. No calls for police, no talk about fraud. No. Instead, you know what they're saying? So a private citizen bid for contracts and he get through. Once everything was above board, what is the problem? What is the issue here? The same people who had a problem with Kareem Marcel and his $2 million and Rhoda and she $3 million. But the man who got 17 million, 5 times what Rhoda get, 6 and 7 times what Kareem got. Nothing wrong with that. Just a private citizen who put in a bid and he went and he gets some contracts. So what's wrong with that? Why the PNM making an issue about that? As I continue to say, the supporters of the Yellow Party, you all are very dangerous. The brotherhood of wrongdoers. If it's wrong, it's wrong. But just because he turned coat and now he on the UNC side, he on Olia side, and he in government, we don't want to talk about that. Nothing wrong with that. That's okay. And there was an article that came out last week that has me very concerned that again, the men and women of letters not talking about. And it was the announcement by the chairman of UDCOT, who is also the chairman of First Citizens Bank, who indicated that First Citizens Bank is going to be used, right, to assist in facilitating the government's grand revitalization plan. First Citizens Bank. And persons have noted that over the last couple of weeks, First Citizens Bank, the shares of First Citizens Bank have taken a precipitous decline. Since all of these things have been taking place, since this new board has come into place, First Citizens Bank shares have been on the decline. First Citizens Bank is one of the 2 banks that the Minister of Finance says they intend to approach to fund the 10% that they promised the public servants, the $1 billion back pay and the recurrent expenditure in terms of salaries. So it seems now that First Citizens Bank, it appears, is going to be the government's personal fiefdom, their personal piggy bank for everything. I'm not telling you go and take out your money from First Citizens, because I bank with First Citizens too, right? So I am concerned. I have a very big concern with that. That the same man who is head of UDCOT, which will be overseeing a lot of this development, is also the head of FCD. We saw the contentious way in which the last CEO would have demitted office. And you, as a shareholder, should be concerned, because the government also said they intend to create a new fund, a new NIF, in which they're going to put FCB shares. So when you go to invest your money in this NIF fund and FCB shares is X price, and then this nonsense continues where the government appears to intend to use First Citizens Bank as their personal piggy bank to fund all of this madness, and the share price starts to fall, it means that your investment in First Citizens Bank is at risk. Understand that. But again, I'm not telling you to pull out there, because these things have a way that they could cause a run on the bank. And from where I sit, the only reason why I'm still with First Citizens is because my experience with that bank has been excellent, exceptional. That while the bank has been running without government interference for the last 10 years, it has been doing very well in terms of the profits that they have been returning, right? And management of the bank. Now, this is at least 2 projects that the government has announced that they intend to use First Citizens Bank for. 1, to pay 10% and back pay, and 2, to fund some of their grandiose plans under this National Revitalization Program. But I draw your attention, Trinidad and Tobago, to something. All those of you who are impressed by this National Trinidad and Tobago Revitalization Plan that the government has articulated, all these things that they're going to build, and some of you all see it and watching it and feel, oh, that's now we will look like this, now Trinidad will look like Dubai. Finally, a government and a prime minister with vision. Let us just look at Victoria Keys. Over 10 years now, and you have hundreds of apartments that are for sale, and you have no buyers. All right? With a view like that, you heard what Lida said, prime real estate, prime property. All right? And people ain't buying it. The people who have the money, who could afford to buy it and rent it out as an Airbnb, also, they're not taking it. after 10 years. So when the government now comes to build this 1,800 waterfront residences, I ask the question, that is for whom? Because if you can't sell Victoria Keys with $1 million ocean view, how the hell are you going and sell this 1,800 waterfront residences? I am certain you have available units in Bayside, which is waterfront, because Bayside has same amenities as Victoria Keys, but they also have a little marina. So if you have a boat, you're among the richest of the rich in Trinidad and Tobago, and you have a yacht, you own a house down the islands, and that is part of your recreation, you could park your boat in front of the building. Right? So when you're ready to go, you walk outside, go down, take the elevator, go downstairs, and you jump on your boat, you start it up, and you head down the islands, and when you think you come back and you park right in front of your apartment building, your condo. Right? They have available units there. The Renaissance also has available units down in Carenage, and that development has been there for years. So you can't sell those, and these are private developments, but you come in now to build 1,800 waterfront residences and expect for who to buy it? When you have existing stock that is not being purchased, but you're going and spend taxpayers' money to build these things just for what? And accuse the PNM of vanity projects? If that isn't vanity projects, I don't know what is. I went to Dong Circular Mall a couple of days ago. Take a walk around the mall and you will see whole set of empty spaces. I saw a guy do a video a couple of days ago on Facebook. He went to Twin City Mall to see their Christmas decorations, because normally Twin City Mall and Long Circular Mall are one of the two malls that have some of the best Christmas decorations. In front of Twin City Mall, normally they have all kind of thing by True Value in front there. So he said, well, let me go and see what they have this year. And to his surprise, nothing. One store in the mall has two Christmas trees at the front of the door. One, I think it was some jewelry store. The rest of the mall, nothing. Not a wreath, not a garland, nothing. By now, that mall would have been top. You go down to West Mall, see how West Mall looking. Go down to Gulf City Mall and see how they're looking. I'm hearing it's the best in years. Twin City Mall, empty. Nothing. So he decided to say, well, I'm going to go upstairs and see if they have anything. You know what he saw upstairs? Empty stalls. As far as the eye could see, most of the second floor of Twin City Mall has no stores. Most of the tenants have moved out. So you have all of this retail space. The state, the government owns this facility as part of the arrangement with the bailout for CL Financial. All of these units, empty. You can't fill those, but you want to come and build more retail space under this grand revitalization program. For who? For who to use? When you have less expensive space in these malls that have heavy foot traffic and people are moving out. Again, go down to One Woodbrook Place and you will see they have so many units available in One Woodbrook Place for rent, for sale. No takers. But you all want to go and build waterfront residences. For whom is the question? They're talking about Victoria Keys and all of this and low income. I saw, because I went and looked up Federation Villas in Federation Park, which is also under the HDC, which just a few months ago was going for about $3.3 million for one. I see the price has been reduced, right? Now it's down to about 2.5 or $2.8 million for one. No takers. But you have so many people waiting for HEC house. Why don't give it to them? Since you're so concerned, give it to them. Because it's just there. Reduce the price and give it to them now. Why wouldn't do that? As Senator Roberts, former Senator Leiter, tell us about that. But they wouldn't. But they know why. So all you who clap in this national revitalization, understand. When they build a set of pink elephants, white elephants, gold elephants, glass elephants, when they build a set of hotels to rival, yes, we need the hotel stock. I am saying no. But right now, all the money that Hyatt making, which is state-owned, when they enter into public-private partnership with these private entities to build these hotels, and they build it and it's rivaling Hyatt, and Hyatt sees its business drop, which affects government revenue. All right? Don't complain. I just say it. But again, Tobago, well, you have an election coming up very soon. And you are not a part of this revitalization program, Tobago. You are not. I saw Diane Haddad, is it? Or is it Diana? She gave the PNM no end of stress, no end of worries. Now I see where she had nothing pleasant to say about Fali. Let's see if I get it here. So where is it? Yes.
When I said the night of that election that everybody loved to Sally from Point to Charlottesville and that he was the saltfish. Yes. Well, there's this saying we didn't know that the saltfish could actually get rotten. But unfortunately, he has been a major disappointment. His output at the beginning in terms of presenting what he was prepared to do. Young person, there was the feeling and the emotion based on his presentation, because he's very good at presenting or fooling, I want to say, is what we would have discovered. Having understood his past and whatever, there was this feeling that he understood what was necessary and would have been generous to work to get it done. And I must tell you that I called this March of the following year when they won the election. By March of the following year, I recognized that there was deception, untruth, and at the end of the day, we were going to be spending 4 years of, I would call it unfaithfulness to the people.
Right. I can probably take a few calls. 7701763. Y'all are remind me so long. What's the time there? Yeah, I could probably take a few calls until 3:30. Angie Brisbane Bascom says the UNC left the economy in a recession in 2015 with 50,000 fired and out of work. Expect the UNC to take the country to the IMF. Let me see this here. Can I see? Jenny.
I am P. Romain.
Hi, how are you?
Good afternoon to you and all those who are locked on to Factor 7 days. Anna Robert must answer to us because he's a government minister, and that's what they're supposed to do. He's in public life now again, so he doesn't stay out in the road. Ask him now if Alison Luther Roberts, which is his father, if he and Adolphus Daniel were best friends. With alleged grow up in Belmont together. So I saw in a report also they mentioned some e-beam company and the directors, there was Adolphus Daniel and some other woman, something, and I saw Alison Luther Roberts name there too. That's the additional $2 million that they were speaking about. So we'd like to know that. And you mentioned something about some government minister getting married at the time, and because them like Bacchanal, me like Bacchanal, so we know about good Bacchanal. Getting married at the time, and they won't know who it is. And they said that wedding in last so much was fire. Me know what we're talking about. But I just want to ask, just show me. Is there the reason why these wedding and relationship don't last? Because they like to abuse women. And lastly, whether or not it is true that that individual was with deceased Karim Fazal, or Fazal, he was the Minister of Technology and Tertiary and something. He died now.
Right.
If he was with the man daughter, asking a question, and he was abusing the man daughter, and the man had to go and take his daughter from him. So is that the reason why this man not happy and always so unhappy? Because he cannot stand up to attention probably, and probably he fallen short because it's soft. I don't know. And the only way he feel he could get somebody is by putting his hands on them, in a be. So I just asking that question because you see, just put himself out there and want to tell people all kind of things. But he's deflected from this life sport issue. So he jumped in St. Vincent election, because I said about Karen stormed the funeral to Shara. She said she knows for a fact that the Kande UNC government had links with the opposition in St. Vincent. They went down there and something. So I listened for what she said. It look as though, and then the color is yellow. It look as though there's some link now again with the opposition in St. Vincent. I say I give an opinion, with now the UNC here now, and because of the life sport thing, we come back out there now, and all the that and all we go down with this government 6 months in office, so much people on the breadline, and they have shown nothing. The country's in a mess. FCB Bank has been downgraded. Republic Bank has been downgraded. The country like it get downgraded. The place is just bush. It's looking like a big dustbin. Nothing is happening at all. I wonder if there's a deflection there. So they get involved in the St. Vincent back and all. But you know what? The UNC, I think, miscalculated. I'll tell you why. I think they still think the people who they're dealing with today is people from 2010, 15. I don't think they understand that the child who was, say, 10 years old back then is now, I'm not saying all that, is now how old now, Dominic?
Who was 10 years old would now be 25.
25. Them is the Gen Z, you know, let's call them so the Gen Z and the X, and they're more hip with social media than the old ones like me. Them then taking that chain of stupid talk like no Cambridge Analytica again, they're searching, they're reading, and they're talking. So they're having a hard time on social media to be fooling people. If you look at the trend of conversation on social media, when they put out the tokeness, it have people that challenge them openly. And I'm not saying it's killing people. I'm just saying people are challenging everything they say now. 20, 10 to 15 people say tell you, no, when they go low, you must go high. And those say that, no, people let them go on them. And they don't have the strength they used to have on social media no more. Because look what they're depending on. This space looking one who ain't even know what race he is, that you put him in the head. That naked guy. You have Arnett Roberts. Imagine that. You have Philip Alexander. Them is the social media people now for the UNC. So it tells you the UNC is on the defensive, they're on the back foot. And you see when you're like that, there's nothing much you can do but just shooting all over the place to see if might go stick on somebody. But UNC, not this time. Those children was little ones 10, 15, this big man and woman no one could vote. They ain't taking all the foolishness and the brutishness. And I went on by saying, the Caribbean must remain a zone of peace. And we don't have a problem with America treating with drugs on the sea and all that, but it can't be extrajudicial killing, not I alone saying that. The senators and them up in America, everybody saying the same thing, and it cannot be. They want to come on we soil and carry out nothing against another sovereign country on another soil. I don't think that is right, and Kano Persad wants to bring, in my opinion, Trinidad to apartheid and to drag me into war. We knows nothing about war. That kind of war like Gaza, we knows nothing about that. And we must remain a zone of peace, and everybody must stand up for it and join again anytime. David Abdullah and his team back out there, everybody must make an effort who interested in peace, who interested in living in harmony, who interested in dealing with our problem with diplomacy and negotiation and conflict resolution must come out and ask support. If I didn't have a prior engagement, I would have been there. So people, again, stay focused, we in it, but this is not hopeless because the people who made a decision to vote for Kamala, and it's the people who have a decision to make when the time is right also. Thank you, Dominic. God bless you, and all those who tune into your program.
Thank you, Jen. So I see someone on the chat by the name of Kishan Ali who's telling PNM supporters to join the UNC before it is too late. Too late? Who want to do that? Who want to do that, Kishan? Something wrong with you. Brian.
Good afternoon, Dominic.
Good afternoon, sir.
Before it's too late for what, Dominic? if PNM supporters don't know it is too late, well then they will never understand. You understand? But Dominic, during your discourse this afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners and callers, I was doing some quick sums in my head. Now, if it is that there was, according to what you read, there was thieving of money before Life Sport even got off the ground.
Yes.
Now, what is a fact is that we knew that there was thieving after the first week by a particular individual who is no longer with a former in the cabinet of the UN. I'm put it that way, but he has questions to answer before the court as well.
Yes.
But he is he's back in the ministry working for and on behalf. You understand? So, we knew that in that particular area there was thieving that began a week after they got into office. There's evidence of that. Right? And it went right up because there were statements being made and payments to certain homes in Maraval and all over the place, $42,000 a day and all kind of things. We know about all of those.
Pay off.
Nobody never
pay off multi-million-dollar mortgages in 6 months.
Right. And up to today, he's still outside. Now, if you look at it, I mean, you added up Life Sport and you added up EMBD and so on. And you came up with over $1 billion. About the $800 million for the same housing thing that go up to now. The auditors can't find a brick or a piece of mortar, boy. Over the $180 million from NLCD, up to now, nobody don't know what it was used for. And that money has already been shared out, that we know about. And that same issue, the gentleman I just spoke about a while ago, who was a former member of that particular cabinet back in 2010 to 2015.
Yes.
So when you look at the kind of money that passed through the hands of these people then, what do you think happened now? And people go back and they voted, Dominic. Or some of them didn't decide, but I am voting because of this one and Stuart Young and all kind of thing, and Rowley and this. Look at where we are today. Some of them thought that the jobs were safe. Safe, Dominic. I always have to go back to Nutrien because if Nutrien had contracts to supply ammonia and urea to over 30 countries around the world, not in Trinidad or the Caribbean, around the world. And today, them closed down after spending $130 billion to upgrade their plants in 2023. Not 2017, not 2016, 2023, a couple years ago. And today they shut down. Because of a greedy set of people who wanted to extort $28 million from them. And now today, you have people being sent home because the contract up. How many more people contracts can be up just now? What we're going to hear about. And what I've been made to understand is that a certain individual came, I think it was on a particular radio station, indicating that his son has lost his job because he was told that families can be working in the same place at the same time. So one only had to go home. Any excuse to send somebody home. And people being sent home because your contract up and you have to wait, and then you can't do anything because you got a scholarship. So you can't do anything right now. You just simply have to wait, sit home and wait. You can't go and look for another job anywhere because you're obligated to work for the government or for Trinidad and Tobago. And you can't do anything because of that obligation. That is where we are today. That is where we are today. And it's not going to get any better. It's going to get worse. just hearing the tip of the iceberg. And you spoke about those other apartments down in the west at Idlewild. I from down south, me know about that.
Yeah.
You understand? But there are lots of us from down south who don't know when you did the comparables. Because I look at Home and Garden TV all the time, and they always do comparables in order to set a price after a renovation or a build. So if you have these other areas, Dominic, and you still have in Victoria Keys apartments that still not sold or rented out or whatever the case might be, and the price continues to drop. Because at the end of the day, you still have to maintain the building. So what's going to happen eventually to all of these empty spaces and empty places? And then they want to build these executive and exotic apartments for who, as they rightly say, I don't know for who they're going to give it to. Because they only see it, when they're not in office, they look at the poor and the indigent. But when they get into office, they look at the 1%, and they look at the rich, and they look at the very rich. So they adjust their thinking to suit. And people have fallen for that all the time. They keep falling for it because all of a sudden the country was so poor, things were so bad under the PNM. But today, everything good. Nothing is wrong. One gentleman came on a radio station just the other day and said up to the 11th of this month, he hadn't gotten his salary. How many more of like him are there outside there? So when you get your pay, or when you have no more pay to get, and you just buy a property or you just buy a vehicle, what is your... And then you have little children to feed, to send to school. Up to now, they didn't get... Many of them haven't gotten the laptops yet. They haven't gotten the $1,000 yet. What is left for them? And grocery prices have skyrocketed. I mean, I go in the grocery and it's shocking to know that the things you were buying just the other day have gone up. And I mean, really, really, you can see there's a big difference in the prices. You understand? And look, this morning, I normally go up to close to Chabonas to get a certain item. Going up the highway free. Normally when you're going up the highway, it's up about 2 little just before you get Chabonas there, you have a little slight chop, it slows down. Straight drive, nobody on the road to go or to come. And then on top of that, now you're going and you're stopping all the fests in not in Brian Lara Stadium, you know.
Right.
In Brian Lara car park. The car park area. Because you don't want no more pay. You ain't consult nobody. So the little man who would have come and said the little snow pony, the lady who said the little souse, or the nuts man, all these little people who will make a little dollar, the Polori people, or the double people, whoever, have no more money to me. And those who've already made arrangements to have the fest and people who would have bought tickets, well, now they have double problems because prices of alcohol have gone up astronomically, and now they have to look for another venue. Have to look for another venue now, so where are they going to go? Because you decided, no more fest, and top of that, you don't have the guts to come and face the people. You only TikToking and your accent. Come out and face the people and tell us why. You ain't doing that. You're home and you're sending message because you're big and you're bad. And this is the problem we have in because he's a small man, Dominic, in other words, and is going to feel the things right around. It's a small person who is dependent upon these little things that normally happen around this time and just after Christmas, leading up to Carnival. They are the ones going to feel the pinch. Or is there really a situation whereby want to hear about Carnival at all because they find Carnival is for a certain ilk and not for the rest of them? I wonder. I really, really wonder in Dominic because the questions are being asked. I really, really wonder. But look at how bad this life spot is. All of these things that are now coming out and people can't even come back into their own country to live. They have to live abroad. And be scared. Even living abroad. Because you don't know. You just don't know who coming up behind you. But look at how bad it was then. think it could be any better today, Dominic? It could be any better today? It's just going to be worse and worse and worse. And Trinidad and Tobago has better band the belly and the jaws because it ain't going to get any better. And we're going to hear more about more people who are losing their jobs. Petrochemicals, the refinery is supposed to start back 7 months now. Nothing yet.
You know, Brian, as you mentioned, Petrochin, right? I saw Munilal said that the refinery is supposed to reopen in 2026. He said, he said that the committee that they had put together under Kevin Ramnarayan, which was supposed to submit their report, this month.
Yes.
Now, about a month or just before the budget debate, the minister in the ministry, what's his name? Keza, Ernesto Keza.
Yes.
He did a live Facebook Live.
He saw the report.
Yes, he said he's in possession of the report. They get it. And the report says that the refinery good to go, and now he's just calling on those people who say they had money and think to put their money where their mouth is. But the other night, Munilal, when he was interviewed in this event that Amcham had at Hyatt, he said that the report is due this month, and the committee gave him the assurance that the report will be ready by the end of this month.
Yes, I know. I heard all of that.
So I'm trying to figure out, they have the report or they don't have it?
The same thing that the same Kaiser about it. I am going to say, talk to the minister. Talk to the minister. I have no comment to make. Talk to the minister. You have no comment to make, no. But you have comment to make when they give a lie.
Yeah.
Say no in your jacket. I was confident that the refinery would start. But I make my calls, Dominic. You know, I understood that I want the refinery to start. I really want the refinery to start. But from what I know, I asked a certain set of people, I'm not going to call any names, certain questions.
Yes.
And all the answers that I got from my questions was no. No. Not yet. No. So I said, okay. So I wait. I can wait until next year, February, you know. I have no problem with that. I will wait to hear what the report says. And I am hoping that I am wrong and the refinery could start back and people could start back to work and whatever